Hi everyone, I've been meaning to release this for a while and finally got around to getting everything together. For those that may not know, I had 3 private interview sessions with David Jaffe, the co-creator and co-designer and co-director and co-something else of Twisted Metal a while back for my Retrospective series. If you haven't seen these, definitely go check those out before listening to this. While I believe I used the most interesting parts of our sessions for the Retrospective, there are some other bits that fell on the wayside, so give this a listen and get even more of his thoughts on the franchise. Each session basically focused on a different generation for Twisted Metal. The first, we talked about Twisted Metal 1 through 4. The second, we focused on Twisted Metal Black while also discussing Small Brawl head-on and a couple of the canceled games. And lastly, third was focused all on Twisted Metal 2012 as well as Drawn to Death a bit. I cut up a few parts here and there, and I've also included timestamps in the description below if you want to listen to us talk about certain topics.
All right, let me get a new one and we will start. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm good to go.
Okay, I am recording whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is the session where I'm interviewing you. I know it's not like with a lot of the games. I know there was a lot of people involved, so it's always like to your best ability, like answer the questions because I know it's not it's a whole group effort. Like Scott Campbell and everybody worked on those games, so just to let you know how what I'm gonna ask you of the later games and everything.
Okay.
All right, but of course, as an introduction, please introduce yourself and what your position was throughout the Twisted Metal series.
When I introduce myself, am I talking just to like a unseen narrator, or am I like saying hey to the audience, or what's the
unseen? Yeah, kind of like an unseen narrator, essentially.
Okay. This is David Jaffe. I am the co-creator of the Twisted Metal series on Twisted Metal 1 and 2. In fact, that's probably just correct. This is David Jaffe. I am the co-director and co-creator of the Twisted Metal franchise.
Okay, great. All right. So this is like a prologue on the history of like what you did before the series, because you were in the industry for a few years. And even before that, you went to college for like movie directing, things like that.
Yeah.
So just as a question here, what discouraged you from pursuing the job of a movie director back when you were attending college?
I was not actually I went to college to be a film director. I wanted to make movies very badly since I was a kid. And I got into video games as a tester just as something to pay the bills while I was waiting for Hollywood to notice me and, them to buy my scripts and give me a shot. And so I needed to make money. And I found a testing position open at Sony ImageSoft. And this is before they were making PlayStation games. This is back when they were making really questionable quality titles like Last Action Hero and Dracula Sega CD. And I started as a tester there. And I guess I would have probably continued pursuing film, but it was right around the time when video games were starting to dovetail into taking storytelling and taking world building a lot more seriously. And so I found that I had the opportunity in my current job that I was already getting paid for to express that kind of creativity that I thought I was only going to have the opportunity to express in film. And so I just kind of started doing it at work there at Sony, and the career took off and I never really looked back.
Last for the prologue, back in the early 90s, what was it like being a tester and designer for Sony during this career as game developers? And how did you have any kind of relationship with the Japanese staff?
So, I mean, being a tester back in those days, testing today is like there's hundreds of people on the staff of the QA staff. Back then there was 3 of us. And we were testing multiple games a day. We were testing things like Skyblazer and Hook and Cliffhanger. And, it was, and the interesting part was the games that came from Japan, specifically Skyblazer, Hook, and Spawn for the Super Nintendo, were all really, really, really good games. There was a quality to them. There was a craftsmanship to them that, to be perfectly frank, we weren't seeing in the games that were being developed in the West. And so it was really cool when Sony PlayStation, which at the time was really, spearheaded from Japan, came to us and showed us I guess it was like a video of what would become PlayStation, and our minds were absolutely blown, especially because as a guy coming from film who wanted to move cameras around and have different perspectives in order to sort of make the player feel different things, in 2D sprite-based games, you really couldn't do that. You could do it, but it would require a huge effort. If you remember, like back this, like Super Star Wars on Super Nintendo, just to get the land speeder, it was a whole different mode when Luke gets into the land speeder. Now you could sit there in real time and move the camera around, and it was a very cinematic experience. And so when the Japan folks came down to show us that video of PlayStation 1, it was... I mean, it was, you know, it was mind expanding. It was like, wow, we can start thinking about video games in an entirely different way, which was, trust me, the lunch that me and the other producers went out to that afternoon after the Sony Japan folks left was quite exciting, because it was just like, holy shit, we've just totally, you know, had a brand new literal dimension opened up for us in video game creation. And what are we going to get to do with it? So it was awesome. It was really, really cool.
About the first Twisted Metal, or rather when it was called Urban Assault, how did Sony approach you when it came to the opportunity to make a wholly original game?
So I had a design partner at Sony, Mike Guillaume, who had gone on to do Warhawk and Jet Moto and some other games at Sony. And we had pissed off a bunch of developers in America because we were very, you know, it's our way or the highway, and we were very tied into our visions, and we were trying to basically be as hold the line as a Stanley Kubrick without having the talent or the history of Stanley Kubrick. So a lot of the developers were like going to our bosses and saying, we'll make games with you guys, but you can't send these fuckers anymore because they're driving us up the goddamn wall. And so I remember our boss pulled us into his office and said, look, there's this developer out in Utah. They've been doing military simulations for a long, long time. They're at the forefront of 3D. We think they'll be great to get into 3D gaming, because most game developer companies don't have any clue about 3D gaming yet. It's all brand new. And these guys have been doing it for well over a decade. And he said, but look, you guys cannot fuck this up. This is your last chance in regards to pissing off these teams that you're working with. You have to sort of embed yourself in a way that they want to actually work with you and they don't want to murder you. And so we went out to Single Track, which they weren't called Single Track at the time. They were called Evans and Sutherland. And it was a group within Evans and Sutherland that ultimately broke off to become the game developer Single Track. And that was insane, because it was really the first time that I had experienced real-time 3D interactivity. I mean, there was one game I can think of called Alone in the Dark, which I think it was Atari, or Ubisoft or somebody had put out, which was actual, you know, like camera cuts and stuff. But short of that, it was all 2D stuff. And when I went out to Evans and Sutherland and I was able to sit in a cockpit of a F-16 or I think F something, I don't know planes, and actually fly the thing that the military guys used to train in. And they had built this other thing that was like a Martian landscape simulator, and you could fly a spaceship around Mars, and there was like a Martian floating city out in the distance. And so, I mean, it just, the minute you really got your hands on, holy shit, I can walk around and be lost in this 3D world, it was the holodeck for me, and it was amazing. And so we're leaving that meeting and going, I don't know what I have to do to stop being such a pain in the ass to developers, but I got to figure it out because I got to get in on this. This is fucking amazing. And that very trip, we were like, okay, we love these guys. We want to work with these guys. What do we want to make? And we were getting our bags from LAX, and we were getting in a cab at LAX and coming back from that very, what would the word be? That, you know, not to be hyperbolistic, but that career-changing trip, coming back from that career-changing trip, we were stuck in 405 LAX traffic. And that was when we said, oh my God, you know, it's peanut butter and chocolate. If we put this fantasy of wanting weapons on our cars to blow all these fuckers in the traffic away, and we mix that with what we just saw out in Utah, which is, holy shit, this is the future of gaming. That really is the birth of Twisted Metal, which at the time we called Battle Cars. And it was called Battle Cars for the longest time. And I remember how we pitched to Sony. We had a meeting in Sony Music, which is where the Sony ImageSoft was at the time. And we all sat around this like King Arthur table, but instead of an old, antiquity table, it was a CD-ROM. It was an entire table made to be like a music CD. And it was Sony ImageSoft product development, and it was Sony ImageSoft marketing. And they're like, okay, guys, we have about 2 or 3 slots for PlayStation games. We want to be on this system. Let's go around the table. Tell us what you guys want to make. And it was that simple back in the day. I mean, the game cost $850,000 to make. It was not, the end of the world if it sank or swim. It was just like, it was a big deal for us, but it wasn't like today where you're spending $100+ million and you've got to get buy-in from all the territories all over the world. It was literally sitting at that table. It comes around to me. I say, based on some conversation I had with my boss and with Mike Yum, and I said, we want to do this thing called Battle Cars. The marketing guy says, what is it? I'm like, it's just cars with guns in a 3D environment. He's like, cool, you got it. That's your green light. I mean, it was that fucking simple, and it was that easy back in the day. And then from there, we just, we moved forward with that, and we moved forward with a game called Warhawk, which wasn't called Warhawk at the time. It was called, it was going to be more of a simulation based on the military's plane called the Warthog, which is an actual name for a plane or a code name for a plane that they have. And ultimately, my partner and I, Mike was one of the designers and I was one of the designers. And our boss was like, look, you guys can't work on them both. There's too much work to do. Who wants Twisted Metal or Battle Cars and who wants Warthog? And we're like, well, we think they're both pretty fucking cool. Let's just flip a coin. And we flipped a coin and I won the coin toss. And I said, okay, I'll take Twisted Metal because that seemed pretty cool. And that was kind of the beginnings of it. And we were off to the races.
That's pretty insane. Like, there's a chance that you could have just done Warhawk instead. And that had 2 games, I want to say? That and the PS3?
Well, that had Warhawk on PS1, and that had then they had a PS3 kind of spiritual successor, but it wasn't really the same thing. But I'll tell you what, that game, almost until launch day, which I think was sometime in October 1995, for both games, they came out the same day. I remember the day we were out eating at Steven Spielberg's Dive restaurant in Century City, which was a whole restaurant theme, like a big fucking submarine that you ate underwater in and shit. And after that, me and our assistant and Mike walked over to the Babbage's or EB or whatever it was, and just to see our games, that we had worked with Single Track on, actually in a game store behind the case, it was like, oh my God, this is fucking real, But up until almost that day, everybody thought Warhawk was going to be the belle of the ball. It was like the marketing guys. I remember we had a marketing meeting where we showed all of the product development titles that we were coming out with, and Twisted Metal was there and Warhawk was there. And halfway through, we had shown our games, and then they were showing Game Day or something. And halfway through, I had to go pee. And I go to the bathroom, and I'm standing there peeing, but there's like 4 urinals, and 2 of the marketing guys that don't recognize me are like basically raving about how cool Warhawk is and how much it's going to totally sell. And nobody's saying shit about Twisted Metal. And Twisted Metal got the crap kicked out of it in focus tests that we did, to the point that I was convinced my career was over, because we had a bunch of hardcore Street Fighter guys come in and they were like, this is crap, stupid. I mean, they were fucking mean as shit, It was like, old school NeoGaf had nothing on these guys. These guys were fucking brutal, And I was like, called my wife at the time and I said, I need to find a new career because we're done, And it turned, and they loved Warhawk. And Warhawk was a great game. A lot of people have fond memories of it, but it turned out, for whatever reason, I like to think because it ended up actually being a really fucking good game. But when Twisted Metal did come out, it really did catch a lot of people's imaginations. But we had no idea it was going to be successful at all up until weeks after it released.
It's really funny. You ended up answering like the 3 next questions. So
I've told the story before. Yeah, I'm trying to give you some fresh takes, but I usually know where this goes. Now, if you have a question that surprises the hell out of me after 20 years of telling the story, I'll love it.
Granted. But we'll see as we go on. But as you're talking about like the I'm guessing Sony is the one in charge of getting playtesters. Like they specifically said, let's find fighting game players because it's a fighting game with
No,
cars, or what?
it was probably marketing, Sony marketing, and I was pitching it around as sort of Mortal Kombat in vehicles. I mean, that was, I don't think, I mean, Mortal Kombat was ruling the roost at the time. I was a huge fan of Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 and whatnot. I don't think anyone can look at Twisted Metal at all, let alone Twisted Metal 1 and 2, and not see the love and inspiration and passion we have for the Mortal Kombat series, because it's all over that fucking game. I think if you look at what was kind of in the pop culture zeitgeist for sort of geeky metal people at the time, and even though I was not a metalhead musically, I loved the culture of it. It was Spawn was really big at the time, Image Comics, Mortal Kombat, things like that really kind of, had their hooks in the DNA of the Twisted Metal series. So, but I was calling it, it's like Mortal Kombat and cars, or it's like Mortal Kombat meets Doom. Doom was another game that was still really big at the time. And so that probably is what drove the marketing guys to say, let's pull some fighting guys then, because Jaffe keeps calling this a fighting game. And I still call it a fighting game, but I think it's so literal that really, I don't think we had the language at the time for me to call it what it really was, which is sort of a 3D arena brawler, which there weren't a lot of those at the time. Maybe there was, we looked a lot at a game that Namco did called Cyber Sled, which was an arcade game, which was the closest thing we could find that felt like Twisted Metal. And we would go down to the arcade in Westwood. And it was funny because we were trying to study the artificial intelligence of the enemy, because we needed to get information back to the single track guys and say, here's how we want the AI to work, even though they were also, they were the ones coding and creating the AI, but we were trying to give them feedback. And so we'd go down to the arcade and we'd put quarters in Cyber Sled, and we would just sit there and not touch the sticks. And people would watch us and go like, why aren't you fucking playing the game? You're just sitting there. And it's like, well, we want to watch what the AI is doing and how it moves around the arena to figure out sort of what its logic is. And so, I mean, it was absolutely, none of us had ever really made a game like this at all. And most of us had never made a game to begin with. And so everything was brand new and everything was like, what the fuck are we doing? But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I guess like it comes from a technical standpoint. Like it's spiritually a fighting game with cars, but if you really like, I guess, look at it, because that's what fighting game players are. They're technical people when it comes to that. Like it's a different mindset.
It is. Yeah. But, there's no hit boxes and shit. It's like, it's like, but it's a very sloppy fighting game.
Yeah. But like you said, 3D brawler, you mentioned Power Stone the other night, and I thought that really resided in me. Did you ever happen to play that game called Anarchy Reigns? It's on PS3. It's not that old. It's like 6 years ago.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know why it's familiar.
Maybe look into it. I feel like you'd dig that game. It's a 3D brawler, and it's like super violent, has these really like colorful, interesting characters. It's a spin-off of that game Mad World on the Wii, but it's on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
Oh, okay. I did play Mad World.
Oh, okay, it's sort of a sequel to that. But anyway, going on with this. Let's see here. So, and you also said that Sony, at a time, you said Sony was also like, they were kind of not trashing the game, but I remember you specifically said that like they asked you when are you going to put the actual graphics in it. So you were saying that like, they really didn't think this would do well compared to what, I guess we already answered that. I don't know. I'm just kind of going through this.
Well, I know, I don't remember when are you going to, did I, that sounds like a story that happened. Now I'm kind of getting old. I'm like, shit, was that a story? Tell me that story.
You said that once in an interview that was included in Twisted Metal Head On, Extra Twisted Edition on PS2. Yeah, and they said that they asked when are the actual graphics going to be implemented into this game, and you guys are like, this is it, this is the game. And I believe
was that might have been Scott Campbell talking.
Maybe. I'm sorry, I'm kind of
but I fucking believe it. I mean, it was not the prettiest game. I mean, the game out. Well, it wasn't. The game out at the time that was beautiful for that kind of thing was Destruction Derby or Demolition Derby, depending on what part of the world you were in when it released. And that was like from Psygnosis. And that was the one that we're like, oh, fuck, why can't we look that good? This fucking game looks amazing. But, I didn't know a lot of things. Like Destruction Derby takes place in a bowl. It takes place in kind of a very small thing. We had massive fucking levels in Twisted Metal. that, were not streaming off the CD. These were loaded into RAM right at the beginning of the level. And that was kind of, we had these massive spaces. I do remember the Japanese looked at the game and said, can you guys replace the weapons with fruit and tomatoes and vegetables and things? So it's like they're throwing, it's like Food Fight meets Twisted Metal. And we were like, I'm sorry, what? You want me to do what? And so we never did that, of course, but also we've never been successful in Japan. Japan wants nothing to do with Twisted Metal.
So you're saying that wasn't even a joke. That was a legitimate request. The fruits and vegetable thing.
Yeah.
That's so odd.
Well, I mean, I don't know how legitimate it was in regards to like, did it go up the chain of command? But I know we had our Sony counterparts outgoing, sending us emails or whatever we had at the time saying, hey, here's some things we think you might need to do to make this palpable to the audience in Japan. And it was like, could you get rid of the missiles and make them tomatoes and watermelons and whatnot? So
something tells me that wouldn't have changed much.
it wouldn't have. I mean, the game is, by all accounts, across the board, whether you're talking graphics or sloppy controls or the stories or the music or the art style, the game to me is an American garage band game. I mean, it really is a game that speaks to, and I think speaks lovingly and accurately to a certain kind of American experience. And it travels a little bit. It travels a little bit down to South America. It travels a little bit to Australia. But short of that, it doesn't connect in Europe. It doesn't connect in Japan. But I think it is very much it's an American bar band is the way I look at Twisted Metal. And I wouldn't want it to be, give it to Insomniac and have them spend 120 million. It becomes slick and perfect. And it's not Twisted Metal at that point.
So you would say like it's kind of like the punk rock mentality in a sense.
I wouldn't even say it's punk though, because punk implies, I think, a little bit more intelligence. Even though I do think the game is a smart game when you're playing multiplayer, there's a lot of depth to it. But it's more of a working class, blue collar, kind of Philadelphia in the middle of February kind of game, if that makes any sense. It's just sort of. It's bar band. It's a shitty fucking dive bar with the band that's sort of playing their heart out on the stage, and that's how I think about Twisted Metal.
So it's kind of like after work, this is how you like unwind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you're saying $850K even back then was like a small budget.
Well, I mean, relatively speaking, you didn't have anything to compare it to. Like, I mean, Mickey Mania was probably $600K or $400K or whatever. So in the world of video games, you're like, holy shit, fellas, that budget's getting up there, because we weren't used to spending any more than that. But it wasn't enough to give a big company like Sony, the need to start putting down all of these executive checks and balances because you're about to spend $100 million. So we need to make sure every X number of steps we have some oversight. It was like, yeah, there's your budget from Japan, Sony ImageSoft. Hope you don't fuck it up and get fired. And they, I don't ever think there was, if there was any oversight, it was very little.
Okay. So going on, was it Sony's decision to remove those cutscenes? And if it was, how did you take it back then, and how do you look at that now? I'm sorry. Horribly.
So we had shot, because again, Mortal Kombat, right? So it was like live action. This was still the heyday of FMV and shit. And I was like, fuck it. I went to film school, sorta. Let's make some fucking movies, And I wasn't, they weren't good movies. It wasn't like, but let's be clear. It wasn't like I was looking at them going, I'm going to make some cheesy B movies and that's the intent. That was not the intent. The intent was to make Creepshow, Twilight Zone, really cool little short stories. And I don't have that skill. I don't have that talent. We didn't have the budget really. So the effects are horrible. The effects are like first season Doctor Who. There's one sequence in that fucking when a character named Mr. Ash comes to take a character away named Black, and Black's just a guy standing there in a fucking tablecloth with Christmas lights for eyes, right? And some fucking paper mache horns. It is terrible. And then Mr. Ash comes out of his semi truck, which wasn't a semi truck. It was two lights in some smoke because that were up on a ladder because we couldn't afford the semi truck. And he takes this mystical canister that's supposed to house the soul of Black the Demon. And it's literally a Folgers coffee can. So when you see him open it up, you see the little lid kind of go up. This is like supposed to be our version of the Ark of the Covenant and Raiders. And instead this lid comes up and kind of goes boing, boing, boing and flips back and forth like it weighs nothing. And even to this day, my ex-wife will make fun of me. She'll look at me and just kind of go back and forth, rocking on her heels going, Black, where are you going? Black, it's so bad. But all that, so it was not meant to be bad. The Warhawk movies are bad because they're not only low budget, they're boring, right? They're genuinely like no one wants to fucking sit through them except when a character named Creel comes on screen who has all it's all bad Doctor Who shit. So anyway, what happened was though, even though it was clear people were thinking these are super cheeseball, there was something about them even back then that was connecting with the right kind of people to the point that we had a focus group because there was a big debate internally. Are we going to kill these movies or keep these movies? The focus group, which were made up of basically kids and teenagers or teenagers and young adults, adored them. They were just like, yes, these are fucking stupid and cheesy, but we fucking love them. They're so funny. They're so cool. You have to keep them. And so I'm like, all right, well, I didn't intentionally make shitty, cheesy movies, but we dodged that bullet because the fans like them. They're going to be in Twisted Metal. And then it turned out that word got back to me that a bunch of the folks in Utah, the single track folks, you know, there's a lot of religious folks in that studio, or there were, and it's a big religious community. And there were key people on the team who we could not have made the game with without their amazing talents. And they were just like, look, there's a lot of, my understanding is they weren't even that upset with the violence or even the cheese. It was the TNA in those movies. And they were like, look, we don't want any part of this. We will walk away from this game and fuck you guys if you put our name on this thing and our work on this thing that has these pretty much naked women, you know, flaunt their boobs in the camera. And so, you know, as much as I hated it, Sony couldn't really do anything. What are they going to say? We're not going to ship the game. So the movies ended up getting a single frame of Calypso with some text, and a couple movies got a little bit of extra treatment, like a car spinning off into the galaxy and shit when it was the cop car outlaw and whatnot. And they were horribly unsatisfying endings. But the fun part is they've kind of lived on the internet. And people have discovered them and they're out there to see. And so it all kind of worked out. But I was absolutely sad and angry and upset that we had put so much time into these, and then we had proven ourselves by jumping through the hoops of focus test. And God damn it, the only thing that was standing in the way were a bunch of religious people. And if you know me at all, who's not religious, and I don't really have a lot of appreciation for religion, I would like, are you fucking out of your goddamn mind? You're going to take these movies out that people are saying are making the game better because there's some goddamn people out in the world that have their knickers in a twist because they see some women's boobs. Come the fuck on. But that's what happened. So I was pissed.
That's so funny because, like, I know what you're talking about. Honestly, if you just didn't have, I think, what was it, 2 or 3 women there, like, that would have changed
Yep.
a lot of things, I think. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really surprising. I kind of always assumed it was just Sony as being like, no, this is like, get rid of this. But I'm surprised.
The only reason you can know that's not true is look at Warhawk. It wasn't like Sony wasn't looking at it going, I have a problem with the mise-en-scene of these films. I have a problem with the third act of the 3-act structure and how it's not quite paying off the setup and foreshadowing. It wasn't that. It was like, we're not going to ship the game because some people are upset about boobies. It was that fucking simple.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's everything for Twisted Metal 1, and now we're getting into 2, and I guess like before production even started. How did you and the team take the news when you were granted the opportunity to make a sequel with a higher budget when you thought the complete opposite was happening?
We assumed it was going to be a massive flop. And so we had already gotten a deal, or not we, I was Sony, but Single Track had already gotten a deal to do something else, or got to do 2 more games. And we didn't greenlight. I think we assumed we were going to make a Twisted Metal 2. And then after that focus group, we were like, well, that's not happening. Let's figure out what we can salvage. And we tried 2 things in concept art. One was art. We were convinced that the problem with Twisted Metal was the controls. They were really complicated controls. We used every single button, which at the time, if you remember, I think it had more buttons than any home console ever, which makes sense because we were having to do driving and shooting. And so we were convinced we'd go into like Toys R Us and watch people play it on the kiosk and stuff and go, people are having a hard time just moving the car around. That's where we fucked up. So let's make the same kind of game and build on what works, but let's find some kind of device that you can control that doesn't require that level of resolution of input. And so for a while we were looking at making it in the future, and these would be hover cars. And if they were hover cars, they could kind of have the strafing movement that people were used to in things like Doom and Quake and things like that. We also explored making them bugs. So we were seriously considering doing tarantulas versus crickets and things that were slower moving and that didn't actually have gas, that you just used the stick to decide to push forward or back. And as we were really getting serious about that, the sales and the reviews started to come in on Twisted Metal, and we're like, well, I guess we're fucking wrong. People seem to really dig this. And then we get a Game of the Year award from EGM, and all right, I guess we're just making a straight up sequel. And we were, off to the races.
That's really funny. That's kind of like what happened with, I don't know if you ever played Excite Truck. It was like on the Wii. It was like a sequel.
Yeah.
And then they made Excite.
No, it was a Super Nintendo with the effects chip, right?
Well, that's Excite. Well, I think they made, I don't know if they made an Excite Bike game on Super Nintendo. I played the NES game, and then Excite Truck was like the spiritual successor. And then they did Excite Bots Racing. So that's what that reminds me of, that they wanted to make something that was a little easier to control. So that's interesting. Any other sort of cut content that didn't make it into 2?
Into 2? I mean, that was never really content that was created that got cut. That was more
I guess ideas as well, like anything that just didn't pan out.
The main thing I can tell you, and I will tell you, by the way, on Twisted Metal 1 that may be worth knowing just real quickly, is that game originally was connected. The 2 things people may not know. One is I was trying very hard to get Steven Tyler from Aerosmith to be Calypso. And I just never could get any traction on that. I thought he would make a great fucking Calypso in the live action movies. The other thing was that we had the first 5 levels of that game, or 4 levels of that game, were all one massive level. So the freeway level, the park level, the warehouse level, the arena level, that was one giant level. And then you had the suburban level, and then you had the rooftops level. And we realized almost at alpha that, holy shit, this game's going to be way too fucking short if we do that, because even though we have this massive level, we can only populate it with 8 cars. And once those 8 cars are destroyed, what do you do in the level? We didn't have any content. So I remember the longest fucking walk I ever took on the beach with a friend of mine. And I was just telling her, I'm like, I don't know if this is right. I need to tell him to cut the levels. We finally just said, fuck it, let's do it. And it worked out. But that was absolutely terrifying, because for a year, we had been playing Twisted Metal on this massive Grand Theft Auto size map. And that's what we knew Twisted Metal as. And it was only a month and a half before it was on store shelves that we said, fuck it, let's cut it. It was also only 2 months before it was on store shelves when a programmer came in over the weekend on Twisted Metal 1 and said, you know what, let me try to do split screen on this like I have on my Nintendo at home with my kids. And multiplayer was thrown in as just a, hey, what do you think of this at alpha? And it was like, oh, this is really fucking fun. It was never intended to be a multiplayer game. And that ended up making it sort of the legs of that game and made it what makes that game so goddamn great. It's just fucking luck in a lot of ways. It was talent, but it was also a lot of fucking luck. So Twisted Metal 2, the biggest thing I remember about that, though, was now a lot of people always say on any game, why is the sequel always better than the first game? And it's because and we saw this with God of War 2 as well. It's because the first game, you're figuring out what the fuck the game is. Like you literally are making it up. You know, the popular analogy is you are building the plane while you're flying it. You are making the shit up as you go. And once you know what it is and once it's connected with enough of an audience, the second game is where you really actually start to go, okay, now I know what this is. Let's make it really fucking cool. And that's when we had a producer on the title named Hunter Louisi who had all I knew for me is I wanted it to be deeper and more like a fighting game. So I had tried, I went in going, let's take the Mario Kart controls where you have the weapons on the shoulder buttons, like when you run over a pickup. And I said, okay, let's have pickups and L1, R1, L2, R2 would just be different weapon slots. So as you're driving over a power missile, oh, that happens to fly into R2, great, you know, whatever. And it was very hard to play the game that way because you never really could get used to what was where. It was really dependent on what you had picked up at any given moment. And Hunter Louisi comes in, and I remember this day, we were watching the OJ verdict come in. And we were sitting in a conference room at Sony, and it was like, okay, we're all waiting to hear if the guy's guilty or not and everything. And he says, why don't we do it like Street Fighter and literally put in D-pad moves for things like freeze and shield and jump and all that. And I was like, there's no fucking way that's going to work. You can't do it. You can't drive a car like that. But Hunter was absolutely right. And that was really, I think, the big expansion. I mean, yeah, the graphics were better. The interactivity was better. The quality of the title was better. It was longer. The movies were obviously better. But the biggest real thing that we added to that game that made a big difference was Hunter's idea of taking a lot of the nuanced attacks that I wanted and putting them on the D-pad and saying, let's make it more executed like a fighting game. And even though it still never, you know, got into the realm of Mortal Kombat, that really did help people start to think about it more like, okay, I'm fighting these other cars, especially when I'm going one-on-one.
I haven't played one in years. I was just playing it the other day, and I actually didn't even try weapon, the freeze move and shield. So that was a thing for 2.
It doesn't have that in 1. Yeah.
So that was a thing for 2.
Those were pickups in 1.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was like, it's like we had something in 1 that were like car jacks, right? Like in, which no one used, that never ever ended up in any other series. And the idea was you could take this spring, and it's in that game, but no one uses it, and you can drop it behind your car. And I loved the fantasy of someone's coming up behind you, and you drop this, and it catapults them over you, and now they're in front of you, and you can wail on them with the fucking missile. And I'm like, that's the greatest fucking moment ever. Never fucking happened. Another one we had in Twisted Metal 2 is we had like a bridge that you could collapse with remote bombs. And when people drove underneath the bridge, it would collapse on them and it would be an instant kill. And I was like, that's the best fucking thing ever, you know? But ultimately the amount of time it would take to set up that kind of, Warner Brothers, Wile E. Coyote trap, most people are like, fuck you, I'm just going to get a few power missiles and kill you. But I was just like, whenever I could pull that off, which was super rare, I felt like a fucking badass whose plan had finally come together, and it was awesome. But there's all the games have a lot of those little things that I thought were going to be the big shit, and nobody gave a fuck about them. But you know, it's what you do. You fire 1,000 shots, and if 50 of them stick, you have a hit.
That's funny. That's something that actually got worked into War of the Monsters, from what I remember. The buildings can collapse, and you can die if you're under it. I don't know how involved you were in that game.
I was involved only in the way that it was my initial idea. All I did was there was a Sega Dreamcast game called Godzilla. I said, I want to do Twisted Metal with giant monsters. And so I had a Photoshop guy at the office take a screen grab from the Sega Dreamcast Godzilla and put another monster in split screen below him. And then I said, put some HUD elements on it like fire breath or shield or whatever. And let's take that out to Utah because we were looking for a game to make with those guys. And that was it. And I was going to work on that game. And I had one meeting, and then God of War kind of came up, and I was like, okay, I want to go do God of War instead. And so it ended up going to a different designer.
Oh, okay. All right. But back to Twisted Metal 2. And I guess it'd be safe to assume that gameplay enhancements were like the utmost priority when it came to developing it?
Well, it depends on what group you worked in. There was a big premium put on upgrading our textures and making the graphics look better because we didn't like the fact that we were kind of the ugly stepchild of the PlayStation launch window. And we did feel that way. Scott and the team out in Utah absolutely felt that way. And I always thought it was cool, but I did look at these other games like Ridge Racer and Demolition Derby and Wipeout and go, why can't we look like that? You know? And there were a million reasons. It's like, well, Jaffe, you want a fucking full 3D level that you could drive around in and it's huge? Take your fucking pick. We can put it on a track and it'll look great. It's like, okay, I don't want to do that. You know, but they did, you know, graphics getting better, effects getting better, storytelling getting better, making sure I hired a writer to work with who was a great fucking writer, making sure we had comic book art. That was important. Gameplay, you know, all of interactivity going up. I mean, it was like, I remember the first meeting we had for Twisted Metal 2, and it's just like Scott on the whiteboard is like, it was a whiteboard. He's just like, what do we want to do for this one? And there was like 15 things, like better graphics, better interactivity, meatier gameplay, better storytelling. And we just kind of, you know, because like I said, you know what the game is at that point. And once you know what the game is, it really becomes all about, you know, executing. Whereas the first game, it's your time is split between executing and actually going, what the fuck are we executing? I don't know what this is yet.
Okay. So it's kind of like an all-around thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, talking about the Twisted Metal 2 stories, I feel like the endings are something that really left an impact on a lot of players. And
yeah.
So you said you got a different writer in regards to compared to one.
I got a different writer because the first writer was me. So the second writer was a guy named who I want to say it was Jeff Goldsmith, who does a lot of really successful podcasts on screenwriting, and he also runs a magazine called Backstory. I know he wrote Black with me. I want to say he wrote, maybe he didn't write those stories, but he did all the effects. He did all the animation on Twisted Metal 2. I do think I was still, I could be remembering this wrong, but I think I was the main writer on 2. And I had great comic book art from our concept artist named Lee Wilson, who went off to work on Halo after this. He was the guy who really designed Sweet Tooth, at least the first iterations of Sweet Tooth. And yeah, it was very much going, okay, let's not, how the fuck, let's put it this way. How the fuck Sony gave me, who had no fucking experience directing to begin with, $180,000 to go off and make fucking live action movies, I don't know. The fact that those fucked up so badly, we couldn't even use them. And I somehow was able to get them to give me another $100,000 to make more movies. Who the fuck knows how they had faith? I don't know what to tell you, but they did. And so, but yeah, it was across the board. We wanted to improve it in every way.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. So since you're the main writer, so you had an idea of how you wanted these characters to be fleshed out, like with the descriptions and the endings. What do you think of the Marcus Kane aspect and how wildly different it was from the rest of the stories? Like, he was the one that was more woke than anybody else. Was that his inspiration behind that?
You know, what I would say on this total seriousness is it's now that I've had some time, right? So the answer I usually give is, and this is correct in terms of conscious awareness of it, is when I write a Twisted Metal or I co-write a Twisted Metal, each one is standalone. So I don't really necessarily worry about the canon of like, well, this happened in Twisted Metal 1. I'm like, dude, I'm writing Twisted Metal Black. I don't give a shit. It's a standalone. Who gives a shit? You know, that's how I think about it. But there are threads, and specifically tied to Marcus Kane, Charlie Kane, Needles Kane, that whole family, that continually creep up in the Twisted Metal, you know, fiction or lore. And so in Twisted Metal 2 was really the first time we started playing with the idea that this could all be sort of in some psycho's head. And we really paid that off in Black. But there may very well be a really interesting, deep story about twisted, fucked up families brewing underneath the surface. But for me, whenever we've written a Twisted Metal, I've never gotten to it. I've just kind of poked around at the ground in little things would come up and I would use them. But I have the feeling if I really ever put the effort in and said, fuck it, I'm going to excavate this area that I keep digging in, there is a lot more in common and that tie all of the Twisted Metals together. But I couldn't tell you consciously what that is, other than it has something to do with a really fucked up, dysfunctional family that seems to be up in each other's business constantly. Even to the point that the last Twisted Metal that we finished ended on a cliffhanger where we now have son of Sweet Tooth, daughter of Sweet Tooth, and quite probably Sweet Tooth, who's never going to stay dead, who was buried alive at the end of Twisted Metal. So I don't fucking know.
Oh, that's always that's really funny because I felt like the idea behind those cliffhanger endings was just like it's like an endless cycle. It's gonna keep going no matter who dies or, you know. And
yeah.
But it's funny because I was also reading through stuff like the Twisted Metal wiki is obsessed over saying like this is a contradiction because this person didn't win the last one according to this. It's like I'm pretty sure they're all supposed to be separate. Like
they are, because look at it was based on Mortal Kombat.
Exactly.
It was based on Street Fighter. It's like, well, Kano doesn't always win. When Kano wins, that's your alternate universe. When Jax wins, that's your alternate universe. It's like it's not one big story.
That's kind of what I figured too, with like you said, little thin threads in between.
Yeah.
So fans to this day still say Twisted Metal 2 is the best game in the series. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think all the games have things they do better than the other games. I think Twisted Metal 2 is probably the essence of what we were going for when it came to the arena brawler light fighting game when you are in split screen and fighting a friend and it feels like a really good fucking strategic but still fun and raucous brawl. I think that game does that better than any other. And so people, I think, who have those memories playing with their dads or their friends or their brothers and whatnot, that I think I understand why they would say that. I think if you're talking about world building, I think Twisted Metal Black probably wipes the floor with all the other ones. I think if you're talking about ambitious, interesting design choices, I think Twisted Metal 2012 is probably the best, but it doesn't do the other things as well. So we don't really, I don't think we have one that is the best. I think Twisted Metal 2 probably is thought of that way because it was the one that came out at the right time where the world and what gamers wanted merged with that design better than any other. Because after that, it's always been diminishing returns in terms of sales. Like more and more people moved on from Twisted Metal after the PlayStation 1 era. And so Black is thought of wonderfully, but Black didn't sell what Twisted Metal 2 sold. And 2012 certainly didn't sell what Twisted Metal 2 sold. So the audience gets smaller and smaller because it really was a game of its time. I don't think the IP is of its time. I still think the IP is incredibly rich. I have said over and over lately that I'm not that interested at the moment in making video games right now, but I am incredibly interested in going back to the world of Twisted Metal, whether it's in a graphic novel or a slasher film or just something, because I think that world is totally rich and really fucking cool and interesting. But I think that's probably why they say 2 is the best, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can't pick between your children. That's always what I hear game developers say.
Could, I guess you could, but I choose not.
No, exactly.
Hey, so listen, I have 10 more minutes, and I got to actually get ready for a stream, but I'm more than happy to jump back and do a second pass of this.
Okay, I guess we can ask that now.
Or I can just do questions that are faster. I mean, I'm giving you long answers.
No,
I don't know what
I like the long answers. I didn't expect it to be this descriptive, but I'm getting so much new information.
Okay, so why don't we go for 10 more minutes and then we'll just reschedule another chat.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we'll do that. Maybe we can at least finish up 2 and then we have an idea. Yeah. Actually, well, that actually was it for 2. This is getting into 3 and 4, which I think would be shorter. Anyway.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay. What is your take on what went down between Single Track and Sony when it came to Twisted Metal being adopted by 989 Studios? Was it like beyond your control, or like what? I can't find any concrete information on what happened in that transition.
It really, the losing Single Track, I mean, you know, it really speaks to the power of brand, to be honest, because I don't think you'd find many people who would say that Twisted Metal 3 is a better game than Rogue Trip, for example. But Sony had the brand, and even if they didn't have the brand, they had the marketing dollars, which you didn't see a lot of marketing for Rogue Trip. But I think most people would agree Rogue Trip, which was actually the game made after the main Twisted Metal team split off in Utah, most people would say that's the better of the two games. But it wasn't like there you go, you got a copy. It wasn't like a mean or an angry split. It was literally the management at Single Track was looking to build their business in a different way. I think they wanted to get more into publishing. They wanted to have a little bit more control. And so they said, you know what, we're not going to keep going with Sony. We're going to sign up with GT Interactive. And so Sony's like, okay, that sucks. We're really disappointed. But we need Twisted Metal because it's making a shit ton of money for us. We have a team down in San Diego that's made Rallycross, so they already have a physics engine for vehicles. They can start right away. And so I went down there for one or two meetings just to kind of give them some feedback based on what I knew about making those games. And that was really all I had to do with it. The games, all I can tell you is the games are not looked at as fondly as the games that were developed by Scott and his crew that I worked on with those guys as well. But to the credit of the Twisted Metal 3 and 4 teams, and they were different teams within Sony San Diego for the most part, those guys were like 7 months of development to put a game out. It was like, dude, you have no fucking time. We need it for Christmas. And those guys went above and beyond to sort of put them out. And there are people to this day who are like, oh, those are my favorites. I love Twisted 3. I love Twisted 4. The thing I didn't like about them was the thing I really didn't like about Twisted Metal 2, the thing I didn't really like about Twisted Metal 3 and Twisted Metal 4, honestly, I had some problems with the physics because the cars kept turning over and you had to sort of fucking flip them back over. And I know that was a feature from Rallycross, but I don't think it works in a game like Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal really isn't about driving cars. The cars are sort of a smoke screen. The cars are a window dressing. They are arena brawler characters. They need to be able to rotate in the air. They need to be able to rotate when you're not giving them acceleration. You don't want them flipping over unless that's sort of built into the car's personality where that can be a weakness of the car, because who the fuck wants to be on their back during a brawl? It's really fucking annoying. So I think those teams, and a lot of teams who have tried to make car combat games, they make the mistake of literally thinking them of them as cars. And they're not cars. They can't be cars, because if you actually tried to have an arena combat game with vehicles, it would be really fucking annoying and boring lining up shots, because cars don't do that well. We've experimented with it. The other thing is, I think they only took the surface of the IP. So it's like, oh, Sweet Tooth's a crazy, wacky clown. Let's make him crazy. This game's all dark. Let's make it bloody. And it's like, yeah, all that's true. But like I said, there's something that I still to this day don't entirely understand that's sort of underneath the floorboards of the Twisted Metal mythos that I think grounds it in something that people relate to more, that feels more sinister, that takes itself more seriously. Even the second game, where there were some crazy fucking stories going on, there was an aggressivity to it that I don't think you see in 3 and 4, and you certainly didn't see it in the marketing when they had little people, clowns dressed up helping Sweet Tooth wash his truck, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? That's not Sweet Tooth. But again, the games made a shit ton of money for the company. A lot of people still love those games. The teams worked their asses off and delivered. So I don't have any ill will towards those people. I just don't really look at those as proper Twisted Metal games that fit in that universe. They're kind of like in Vacation, where you've got like Randy Quaid, the cousin, who's like the cousin removed. It's like, he's not really part of the family. It's like, yeah, he's officially related by blood, but we don't really invite him to all the birthday parties. That's how I think of Twisted Metal 3 and 4.
That's actually a really good way to describe it as well. And I always thought about that too, because like even comparing the endings of just Sweet Tooth, like 1 was about the soul of his lost friend, and 2 was right, like basically a Metamorphosis homage. At least that's how I took it. And 3 is literally all the ice cream and candy in the world. I'm like, they put no thought into this. That's always how I felt.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because 2 to me was meant to really just both 1 and 2 were meant to show how fucking insane he was, right? It's like yes, it's funny on the surface. He wants a paper bag, but the idea is, even though it wasn't executed well, the guy could have anything. He could live forever. He could have ultimate power. He could have all the money in the world. He literally wants a paper bag that he thinks is his friend, but it's a fucking paper bag. Same thing with the second one. Is he could have anything, and he wants to be a bug in a garden just so he can murder people as a bug. It's stupid, but it's fucking batshit crazy. And I don't think they vibed in with the batshit crazy. I think they vibed in with like, oh, he's a clown. I'm like, well, that's just his costume, man. He's fucking insane, you know? But what do you do?
Yeah. And so I was looking into like all the kinds of games, like you mentioned Rogue Trip, and there was also Vigilante 8, and as well as Twist Metal 3, around like I think there were like 4 months between each other, all those games.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Any reason you weren't involved in at least like Rogue Trip? I noticed like it doesn't seem like you were working on anything in particular at the time.
No, I was. So I worked on a game called Dark Gun. So after Twisted Metal 2 was a big hit, I was like, I want to do internal development. So Mickey Mania, Twisted 1, Twisted 2 had all been with developers that I had to fly around or get on phone calls and all that shit. And I'm like, I want to try to fucking develop a game internally now so I can actually be with the team all the time and have that experience. And so it was a game called Dark Guns that was abysmal because I had never made a game before, and I was trying like internally, and I was trying to produce and direct, and I'm not a manager. And it was like a 2.5-year game that ultimately ended up being an overhead shooter that Sony spent $3 million on and ultimately canceled because it was awful. The fact that and you can find images and video of it on the internet. If not, I can send you some if you want it. The fact that I still had a job, let alone they sent me to Santa Monica to start up Santa Monica and make Black is just more of that pure fucking Sony luck, because I just wasted millions of dollars of their money on a stupid fucking game. But it was like college. I got a learning experience. So, you know, that's what I was doing while they were doing Rogue Trip and Critical Depth and all that stuff. I was like, okay, well, I'd love to work on another game with those guys, but I want to have an experience now where I get to be coming into work every day, and the programmers and the artists and the musicians are actually there, and I don't have to commute to Utah every couple of weeks.
Okay, yeah, I honestly never even heard of Dark Gun. I'm sorry, I wasn't even able to find.
There's no reason you would. I mean, it didn't come out. I've shown it. I've shown it on streams from time to time. I have a meaty as fuck design document. We probably spent $100,000 on the design document, which was just full of concept art, and it was like 300 pages long. I still have it. To show you how little I knew, I'm like, and I handed this thing out to the studio with pride, like anyone's going to fucking read a design document. Nobody reads design documents. They never have. But that was the beginning. If you know, Sony didn't know what they were doing at the time in terms of game design. That was a new profession. And if we would have had a mentor there that knew this shit, they would have said, dude, iterate. Don't even make a 2-page fucking design document, and let's build something as a prototype. And then if it's good, we'll keep going. You've spent $150K on art and resources for a document that's a phone book that no one's ever going to look at. Like, oh, but nobody said that.
You have like video footage of Dark Gun, you said?
I do. I have to find it, but okay. I absolutely have video.
I mean, no rush, but that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I can give it to you.
Okay, so this is definitely a good place to stop because I guess we covered, because that was pretty much it for Twisted Metal 3 and 4. Wasn't
okay.
I mean, unless you had anything else to say about those games.
Let me think if I'm missing any good stories from any of the games.
I mean, playing, because you had zero involvement, right?
I went down to San Diego for one meeting with the team, and they showed me a level, and I talked to them about a few things, but that was it.
Okay, yeah.
It was like maybe an hour and a half meeting, and I never saw it until it released after that.
Yeah, I played through them recently. You're totally right. Like how they don't control very well in 3. 4, it looked like they control. It feels like they control much better. Like they actually took whatever feedback they got and tried to implement it. But otherwise, it was kind of like the same
I think
old.
The biggest thing about 4 that people remember well is the Rob Zombie stuff, because a lot of people really liked, I think he's in it as a character. They really like his music in that game. I think the music absolutely fits the personality of Twisted Metal, to the point that we reused some of his music from 3 and 4, or from 4 in the last Twisted Metal. So I think if nothing else, he really offered, or Twisted Metal 4 really offered that to the, sacrifice that on the altar of Sweet Tooth, which is now it's sort of part of its heritage, which I think is really cool, because it makes total sense that Rob Zombie would have his hooks in Twisted Metal in some way or another, even to the point that if we ever got so fortunate to make a Twisted Metal TV series or movie, I would love Zombie to come on and direct it. I mean, that's a fantasy. Who the fuck knows? But that would be cool.
Getting into Twisted Metal Black, how did you approach Sony about making a new Twisted Metal game? Or did they approach you about it first?
I'm trying to remember, actually. I think probably what it was I had gone off to make my own game called Dark Guns, and it did not go well. It was ultimately canceled, and I knew it was kind of moving in for a crash landing. And at that time, we were up in Foster City, and we had the opportunity to open Santa Monica Studios. And it honestly was a really good kind of parachute out of the production disaster that was Dark Guns. And so it was like, oh yeah, let's go open up Sony Santa Monica. And the guys who had broken off, who were single track, and then they became GT Interactive, Scott Campbell, who was the leader of a big group of that team, wanted to leave GT Interactive and start his own thing. And so he reached out to Alan Becker at Sony and said, hey, would you guys be interested in working with us? And Alan was like, of course, we're starting this new studio in Santa Monica. I don't remember if it was Scott or us that proposed a new Twisted Metal, but we knew there was new hardware. And the fact that we would be working together again, it was kind of a no-brainer that let's try to bring Twisted Metal back to its glory days, because we knew that Twisted Metal 3 and 4 had left a really kind of sour taste in a number of gamers' mouths who really liked the series previously. But in terms of who actually proposed it to who, I don't remember. But what I do remember about it was it seemed like a perfect stars alignment moment where they wanted to start a company. We were starting a new studio. I was coming off a really big flop that never really was able to get off the ground. So I needed to kind of, get back into sort of the sense of making something good that people liked. And so it all just kind of worked out and lined up, and we were kind of off to the races almost immediately.
Okay, yeah, I guess because it's been so long and I can never find a clear answer about how development started,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I remember specifically was trying to figure out what it would be, right? So we knew that Twisted Metal 3 and 4 had kind of deflated people's interest in the genre and in that specific property. And there was a sense of, okay, how are we going to bring this back to sort of the masses? How are we going to bring this back to people who are really excited about it? And there were two ideas. One idea was what became Twisted Metal Black, which I don't remember. I think we called it like Twisted Metal. I don't remember what the fuck we called it. It wasn't Twisted Metal Black. It was like, maybe it was Twisted Metal. Might have been Apocalypse, but I don't remember. And another one I was working on was basically more of like a throwback to Twisted Metal 2, but on PS2 technology, which was going to be Sweet Tooth kind of wearing an Uncle Sam hat, and it was going to sort of be more of a cartoony Twisted Metal 2 Road Trip USA. So it was going to be like fighting on Mount Rushmore, fighting on the Statue of Liberty, fighting on the Golden Gate Bridge, sort of doing the world tour that we did in Twisted Metal 2, but kind of making it more American based, especially since we knew most of our audience were Americans anyway, in terms of people who really resonated, or the game really resonated with. So I was going back and forth between this kind of dark, violent, depressing world, which was inspired by things like Jacob's Ladder and Seven, and the art or the photography of a guy named Joel Peter Witkin, who actually would go to Mexico and purchase corpses from the morgue, and he would pose those in really weird fucking poses and really just disturbing, sometimes sexual imagery and stuff. And I was really vibing with that whole flavor. But it seemed so out of the ordinary for what Twisted Metal was, that there were moments where I thought, this is going to be great because no one's going to be expecting this. And in that, we can really surprise people. And then there were days where I'd come in and say, no, we need to do Twisted Metal Road Trip because that's totally what people expect. And let's give them what they expect, but let's just execute it really well, because it's been a while since people have had a really well executed Twisted Metal. Truth of the matter is, if we would have gone with Twisted Metal Road Trip, it probably would have sold better than Twisted Metal Black, because it probably would have maintained the T rating that the series up until that point had, which made it a lot more accessible to young kids that probably were vibing with the game as much as hardcore gamers. But I was at a place in my career where I was just like, I'm going to go for it. I have this vision. I want to work with the team to develop this vision. And there's something really cool and fun about playing in this really dark playground. And so we just said, fuck it, let's go with it. And I pitched it to marketing. Marketing was down with it. And so after that, we never looked back. We just said, fuck it, let's go dark and let's make this thing like brutal and scary and sinister, and really make the world, and specifically Sweet Tooth, sort of into our own version of Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees.
Okay, would you say it was your mindset at the time that convinced you to go with a much darker direction for Twisted Metal?
Well, I mean, it wasn't my mindset. Like, I wasn't going through some kind of massive depression in my life, but I think it was just more recognizing that is that kind of underbelly of humanity, slasher movies, horror movies, psychological thrillers. Those are things that, just as I was like 30 at the time, maybe. So, I mean, I was kind of leveling out with the stuff that I vibed with. And I was just like, you know what? I really like that space. And so it wasn't so much that I was having a rough time in life. More, it was just, I was finally really, not finally, but I was comfortable acknowledging and embracing the fact that, hey, you know what, Jaffe, you have a dark side, and it's not just a dark side, it's a dark side that you really like to play with and connect with. And let's just fucking go for it.
So does that relate to the stories about how the Sweet Tooth in Twisted Metal Black was one of the first concepts you came up with for the character?
No, I mean, we knew almost immediately we wanted him to be sinister, dangerous, like a fucking slasher. But I know we spent a lot, so it was clear immediately we weren't going to be going back to the old Sweet Tooth, which was sometimes personified as literally a clown. Like his skin didn't have makeup, he just had white skin and he was a clown. Other times it was a guy playing a clown. We knew we weren't going to be doing that. We knew that he was going to be this guy who was formidable, dangerous, creepy as fuck, wearing this really demented mask that was sort of our own version of Freddy Krueger. But in terms of exactly what he looked like, we probably arrived at his body type and his costume relatively quick. And the core idea of the mask we knew right away, but it probably took us a good maybe 2 or 3 months to sort of work with, I think it was Martin Mercer and Cecil Kim, who were the artists that I really worked with to develop what ultimately has become his sort of signature mask that was introduced in Black.
All right, so I know you said before that Twisted Metal Black didn't sell as well as 2 overall, but how was the fan feedback? Would you say people dug what you guys were going for?
Oh, fuck yeah. I mean, I remember one of the guys at Sony Santa Monica, the day the reviews came out, and the reviews were fucking through the roof. There was like 9s out of 10s all over the place. Great fucking reviews. And I remember he came up and he was looking over my shoulder when I was reading GameSpot's review, and he says, this game is going to make so much fucking money. So we all thought we were onto something because the reviews were so fucking great. But it was kind of at that time, I think, where video games, even though we as developers and super hardcore fans were ready to start to look at them as art pieces as well as commercial pieces, it was still early 2000s, and you were still getting a lot of that Super Nintendo, PS1 era games are just for kids. And I think putting out I think between putting out something that was so dark and embraced its darkness and had a big fucking M right on the title, and I remember being super excited when you flip it over and you read the descriptor and it's like blood, violence, cussing, all the reasons it got the M. I was like, this is fucking awesome, you know. But between us losing a big segment of the audience that loved Twisted Metal, which was kids, and the fact that ultimately I think, other than the people that really connected with Twisted Metal at a deep level, because you can play Twisted Metal Black both split screen and online, like the fighting game we always wanted it to be, but most people don't see it that way, and most people had already gotten their fill of like if you don't see Twisted Metal as the fighting game that we designed it to be, it's just in this day and age, and it was starting to happen in 2001 when it came out, it comes across as a very shallow, basic experience. It's like, well, I'm just driving around shooting stuff. What is there to fucking do? And it's fine. And in 1995, it was a brand new concept. But as the years have gone on, unless you really experience it as a fighting game, it just comes off as a very shallow kind of drive around, blow stuff up. And every generation gets less and less interest in a game that simple. And we have a harder and harder time communicating that the game's not really that simple. You just have to sort of, kind of know how to play it.
It's funny because you say the direction might have meant the game not selling as well as a more faithful sequel to 2's presentation would have. But I think the Dark World of Black is exactly what people wanted, especially looking at early titles for Xbox 360 and PS3.
Yeah, I mean, we were a little ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, exactly. So I've seen modders open up the game and show a few unfinished bits of it, including Warhawk as a playable character at some point. Any reason in particular that didn't make it into the game? And was there any other kind of cut content that didn't make it as well, gameplay-wise?
Yeah. I've heard people talk to me about when people talk to me about Warhawk being playable in Twisted Metal Black, excuse me, it's something I take on faith, because I don't remember that. It doesn't surprise me that was planned. I almost kind of maybe remember writing some dialogue for the character's loading screen even. Like, what is this character's story? Because I wrote all of those with Paul Jenkins. But it definitely was lack of time. Anything that got cut was lack of time, and or the fact that when you're dealing with flight, it's a totally, it's a new dimension you're introducing to a game that historically has been grounded. And it probably was one of those things that were like, yeah, let's put a fucking helicopter in as one of the secret characters. We already have the model, we have the effects, this will be great. And then we were running out of time probably, and the coders looked at it and said, you're going to have a shit ton of problems with this, because we haven't built these levels to keep helicopters from going out of the levels, and we're going to have to probably spend an extra 3 months just to figure out how to solve this. Are you sure you want to do it? And it was like, so that's probably why we didn't include it. It wasn't something that we had Warhawk flying around and playable, and at the last minute we cut it because there was some awful helicopter crash in the news, and it was nothing dramatic like that. It was just a big idea, like a lot of big ideas in games, that you kind of take baby steps and then you realize you're out of time and something's got to go. And that was probably one of the things that went.
Yeah, I saw the loading screen and the selection screen for him, things like that. But that's funny. I didn't know Paul Jenkins helped you write the story. I'm doing a video on his work with the Darkness comics and games.
Yeah, he wrote the Darkness. He wrote as a games. And but he was I knew him from writing Spider-Man. He wrote Wolverine Origins. He's a pretty big, well-known comic book writer, specifically with Marvel. Now he's doing a lot of indie stuff. And I reached out to him. I'm trying to think why I reached out to him specifically, what he was writing at the time. He may have written some issues of Spawn. It may have been that maybe my first choice was someone like Garth Ennis, who was really kind of ruling the roost of kind of violent, dark stuff at the time. And maybe Garth was like, I can't do it, but you should talk to my buddy Paul. I don't remember how we touched base, but he's been a friend ever since. And yeah, I mean, he's super amazing writer. And yeah, The Darkness is one of his games as well, for sure. Right. So I had two writers I worked with. I worked with Paul. So basically the stories on Black were originally going to be fully animated. And I worked with a guy named Jeff Goldsmith to write the basic stories as scripts. And so it was me, Jeff Goldsmith, Martin Mercer up in the Sony conference room, sometimes pulling all-nighters. I remember Martin sleeping under the table and everything. I mean, it was brutal to get these storyboarded and written, and we were storyboarding them while we were writing them. And it turned out towards the end, we just didn't have the time or money to fully animate everything. And so when they had to get cut down into more of the kind of semi-moving slideshow that they are now, I reached out to Paul because, you know, he was good with sort of internal monologue because of the comics. And I knew that we needed somebody to sort of write the internal monologue in different POVs of each of these individual characters, because that's how we would communicate. Each one would have their own voice actors. So that's sort of how the writing process went.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I always thought that the reason Black's cutscenes were directed the way they were is because it was a stylistic choice, sort of like an evolution of how Twisted Metal 2's cutscenes were presented. I didn't know there was a plan to make them fully animated.
We were going to animate a lot more of it. Like, there are still some shots in it where it's fully animated, and we tried to keep as much as that as we could. But end of the day, it was taking way too long. We just couldn't get it done in time.
I love the way it turned out. So I'd say it turned out for the better.
Yeah.
So diving into the world of Twisted Metal Black, what drove you into making them so much more dynamic and emotional for this game? Was it your drive to direct films, or was it something else?
I think it's because the genre had switched, so it made sense. I think when we were doing Twisted Metal 1 and 2, they were like Creep Show, you know, or they were like cartoony Twilight Zones. So they were really, I've talked about them in the past being like, you know, horror versions of knock knock jokes. It's like a setup and a payoff. I want this, you get this. Uh-oh, you got screwed. You know, that's what 1 and 2 were about. And it made sense to kind of, they looked like they should be that kind of story. The budget made them be that kind of story. The E rating of the game, or the T rating, made sense to be that kind of story. But the minute we said, okay, we're going to go dark and take this world very seriously, the storytelling had to be more mature. It had to be more nuanced and layered. And those stories becoming more than just set up, payoff, little, oh, how does Calypso screw you this time, really is nothing more than the fact that when the genre became mature and aiming at a older audience, we knew the older audience was going to demand a more sophisticated form of storytelling.
Speaking of the stories, I feel like it's a bit of a deja vu where the European copies got the cutscenes removed. Was there any particular reason behind that?
Just violent. So my understanding, because we had this challenge with God of War as well, you know, my understanding, and I may be explaining this poorly, is that unlike America, where, you know, you can put whatever you want into the marketplace and there are ratings. I mean, we're not even legally obligated to put ratings on the games if we don't want to. Sony could release a XXX level violent sex game on PlayStation. They'd get a lot of PR shit for it, but the ESRB is not a legal body, right? So it really is more of good PR and making sure that parents know what their kids are playing in America. My understanding is in England, there is actually a government body that decides if things are at the sort of level of violence or gratuity or sexuality to even be allowed on the shelves of the UK. And so I know with God of War, it was just like, look, there are some things you cannot do that you're doing in the American version. With Black, I don't even think we had that conversation. I think it was just, we shipped the game and one day my boss is like, oh, they have to take the movies out because, you know, I don't know. I really wasn't privy to that. I don't know if it was that there wasn't enough time to come back to me and say, Jaffe, here are the 12 things the UK government has a problem with. Can you re-edit these? Or if the title had never done that well in the UK anyway. So they're like, you know what? Fuck it. We're not going to spend another, you know, $300,000 doing an edit just for Europe. Nobody gives a shit about this game in Europe anyway. Just fucking cut the movies and let's get on with our fucking lives. I have no idea what the motivation was. It could have been either of those, but I wasn't privy to that.
So you're saying if you had the opportunity to change up the story so they can have those scenes, you'd do it?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, I think if it, If they came to me at the time and said, hey, Jaffe, we're going to have, here's some offensive cuts and we're going to give you 3 weeks to fix this so the European audience can have more satisfying Twisted Metal endings, of course, we would have done it in a heartbeat, but it was never presented to us as an option.
All right, but speaking of removed content, or at least removed elements for the stories, any comments on the changes like John Doe and the skinheads he was with, or Dollface receiving that mask at a much younger age by her own father? Were these changes under Sony's accord, or did you want to make those changes yourself?
I mean, I remember sitting in a meeting, which is probably one of the few times in my life I've actually spoken to Kaz Hirai. But Kaz at the time was the head of, I think, Sony PlayStation America. So he was in he was around, and he was up in Foster City. And the head of marketing, or one of the big wigs at marketing, was having some issues with the movies, and I was not budging. I'm like, no, I'm not fucking changing this shit. And she was like, okay, well, let's, to their credit, my production bosses were saying, we're not changing it either. Let's let Kaz make the decision. Ultimately, we're not going to budge and marketing's not going to budge. So let's have a meeting with the guy and go through whatever issues that they were having. The only one that stands out that I remember, there may have been more. I don't remember. You know what? No, I remember them having a problem with the guy, Dollface's father was originally the guy who put her in the mask was originally her dad. And they seemed to have a problem with that. And so we had to change it to make it a guy she worked for named Mr. Creel, I think his name was, which was a throwback to the Warhawk movies in PS1 era, because the bad guy's name was Creel and we were just taking the piss out of it. But I also remember we had a conversation which just blew my mind, where she was like, I'm having a problem with the Bloody Mary story. I'm like, well, what's your problem? Well, there's child-on-child violence in that story. I'm like, what the fuck is child-on-child violence? Did you just make that up? When I was a kid and I got in fights with people, it was just called a fight. I didn't know there was a saying, or there was a phrase. But so there was a more prolonged shot where Bloody Mary picked up this pipe and beat the shit out of this kid that pushed her down in the mud, and really kind of showed her first, not murder, but her first, dance with that kind of level of violence, where she just lets it all hang out and goes ape shit. And I know that was a fight that marketing won. Don't ask me why. It's like, really, you guys are going to fucking die on this stupid fucking hill? Fine. So we still had the story be that Bloody Mary hit the guy, but we just didn't show it. It happened off screen. And then the one that I missed the most, which really bothered me. So somebody, and I don't know if this was coming from Utah, I don't know if this was coming from Sony, but somebody had a real problem that we were calling the Preacher character, which now I call Preacher. I don't give a fuck. And in the new Twisted Metal, he's called Preacher. But back then, he has to go out of his way to say, there's a line in there where he says, I wasn't even a preacher. I was an evangelist. I was kicked out of the church. It's like, okay, we got it. This guy's not officially sanctioned by the fucking church. It was such horseshit. So, but that was fine. But the one that bothered me about that character was, he goes crazy and he is basically drowning this demon. And it turns out he's not drowning a demon. He was basically baptizing a baby. And in his mind, he was seeing it as a demon that he had to basically shove under the water. And we had a beautifully violent cutscene of that actually happening. And we were never allowed to use it because we could imply it. But the idea of actually seeing the preacher take an infant and shove it underwater and drown it as it's kicking and all this shit, I guess was a bridge too far for some folks that at the time had the keys to the kingdom. So we weren't able to do that. So there were definitely some cuts, but end of the day, it all worked out pretty good. People seem to like them.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. It's funny. I show friends that never played the Twisted Metal games, but I show them the cutscenes alone so they can, witness the story. People still, get an emotion out of them. The Most Being Outlaw story, I noticed.
Oh, right.
I remember showing that to a friend, and that just broke her heart. And I love that people can still get a reaction out of these.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
So this one question, I know the Twisted Metal wiki mods would kill me if I didn't ask this, but I don't know if you clearly
Okay.
recall doing the coded dialogue for Minions loading screens. Were you looking for a discreet way to expand on the world of the series, or do you think fans are overthinking things? Because a lot of the theories sound crazy.
I don't think fans would be at fault for overthinking them. I think it makes sense. Why would you not? But the truth of the matter is, I needed to write some dialogue for that character. Are you hearing that beep that comes through?
No, I'm not actually.
Okay, good. So I'll ignore it. I'm getting notifications from the Discord. I didn't know if it was coming on the audio. Um, so I had to write dialogue for every character. And that particular character, who is a guy who's wearing, I think Minion is wearing a bull head or a ram's head or something, was like, oh shit, we forgot to write dialogue for this guy and we're out of fucking time. Jaffe, write something. And I was at home getting over the flu. And I remember just going, I don't have any more stories. I don't know what the fuck this guy's story is. I don't want to write a 3-act story at all. I'm not in the mood. And so I just said, you know what? Let's make it a code. He's a hidden character anyway. If you find it, let's make it a code. It'll be fun to crack the code. This is before the internet was a huge thing. So I figured, okay, it might take a month for the first person to write into EGM and say, I know what the code is, you know? And it was literally born out of the need to write something quick. And that's really what it was. And making it a code was just something fun to do. And then when I kind of said, okay, I'm going to make it a code, I'm going to make it cryptic, I'm going to make it something that is hidden, what would be a really good, fun story for this guy that's not like a 3-act structure, just like a reveal at the end? And that's really where it came from. It was just sort of like, I mean, it's total lazy writing. It was me kind of going, oh, the audience will go, ooh, that's cool. Just like when we did Twisted Metal 2 and Minion takes Calypso down into the pit of hell and talks about Calypso's sister. I didn't have a fucking idea about any of that. I was just like, hey, voice actor, I think it was Mel McMurrin or something at the time. I said, hey, just throw in this line, whoever's playing Minion, talk about his sister. He's like, what about it? I don't know. We'll figure it out later. I mean, and I'm not saying that like, haha, fuck you, audience, I got one over on you. It was sloppy writing. I mean, I don't consider myself a professional writer. I knew for what we were doing, it would be satisfying and interesting for the audience. And I figured if there was ever a sequel, we could deal with it then. But it was never that well thought out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that makes the most sense was that he's supposed to be Marcus Kane, sort of.
I think he is Marcus Kane though, right? Isn't he Marcus Kane?
Yeah. He says he's Marcus after talking about it being in a dream and looking for a way to wake up. Like he's specifically Marcus from 2.
Twisted Metal 2. Yeah, I mean, all that was planned. All that's intentional. But in terms of it being anything more like it was like, oh, we want to tell the next game is actually about the colorful world fighting the black and white. It was never that.
Okay, I'm glad I got more insight on that. So this is a two-parter of a question. Do you think you focused more on the narrative of the game than the core gameplay for this title? I believe you have said that you found the gameplay for Black to be weaker than the PS1 titles you and your crew were involved in, gameplay-wise.
Well, it's weaker compared to 2. I think it's better than 1. Yeah, I just think on this one, I was real happy with how Twisted Metal 2 played. I think the gameplay was too fast, frankly, because we were running, I want to say we were running at 60 frames a second. I could be wrong, but I want to say we were running at 60 frames a second. And we were just like, holy shit, hold on to your fucking potatoes, Dr. Jones. I mean, it was like we did not have a goddamn, and we got used to it at that speed. And we just kind of, didn't realize how fast of a game it was until we put it out. It was harder. One of the things that made Twisted Metal 2, I think, a deeper game is because it was slower and the weapons were slower. And so players actually had a bit of a moment to read and recognize things that other vehicles were doing and figure out a way to counter that or play defense, or whether they wanted to deal with the risk that they saw coming their way and drive into the fire in hopes of getting off a more powerful shot after they took that initial hit. With Black, it was just so goddamn fast that the player just doesn't really have as many opportunities to have that kind of in-game in the moment tactical gameplay. And so between that and the fact that my head and my heart was at that point into creating the world, because the next game I would do was God of War. And so there was definitely a sense that I was beginning to want to get more into storytelling and world building and creating a narrative. And that was really what was getting me up in the morning. And I felt we had already kind of cracked the nut of the gameplay of Twisted Metal 2 on PS1. And so even though the gameplay was extremely important, it wasn't as important to me as creating an interesting world.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a matter of like taste or nostalgia, but I always felt Black was like the pinnacle of the series in nearly every way.
Yeah, and there a lot of people do feel Black is better, and it's really interesting too, because there's a Twisted Metal fan website out there, and a lot of those guys on that fan site are not fans of mine, and a lot of the reason they're not fans of mine is they really came of age and fell in love with a lot of Twisted Metal because of Black. And they would send me videos of this really amazing gameplay where they were able to dodge certain missiles and dodge bullets and drive backwards to create dodging to homing weapons that we never thought were dodgeable. None of that was intentional. None of that was like we consciously sat there and designed that. It was just all the pieces worked together and they figured out how to play that instrument that we happened to build. And so they got really annoyed with me, a lot of them on Twisted Metal PS3, because they were like, well, why can't I do all those things in 3? And I'm like, I thought we built that in, but frankly, I don't know what the fuck you were doing in Black. And so they tried to explain it to me. I never quite understood it. Scott never quite understood it. And I'm like, Scott, they want to be able to dodge guns and shit. He's like, I don't know how to fucking do that. And so it just was a total, misconnect when it comes to that. So there are absolutely people who feel Black has strong gameplay, if not the strongest gameplay. I'm not one of them, but I've seen people play that game at a level that there's no doubt there are people out there that are fucking maestros when it comes to making that game really sing.
Yeah, I guess 2012 definitely felt like the perfect blend between how 2 and Black were designed, which I would think that was the intent.
Yeah.
We'll definitely dive into 2012 another.
Yes, but not tonight. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm running out of energy already.
No, I got you, man.
All right, cool.
So this is the last question on Black. So as you were talking about the games we grew up with, I remember playing Twisted Metal 2 when I was about 7, and I remember seeing the commercials for Black, and I was so excited. I begged my mom to buy a PS2 and get Twisted Metal Black when it came out. Even though it was rated M, she was lax about that kind of thing, honestly. I was 11 when I started playing Black, and I feel like it hit me at a perfect point in my life when it came to enjoying darker and grittier pieces of entertainment, like you were saying. At the same time, it terrified me in a lot of ways. What do you think about that, and how it might be the case for a lot of fans of the series that started playing this game when they were just kids?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if well, there was a big M on the box, so it really wasn't designed with kids in mind. However, I was a kid who grew up with horror. I was a kid who grew up with slasher movies. I literally just took my daughters this last weekend to see Halloween. My daughters are 15 and 13. I love my youngest daughters getting into horror and things like that. So if you were to tell me, and again, the thing is, it shouldn't be, but it is an impossible thing to really appreciate and take in when you have fans of work that you've helped create, and they talk to you about the warm memories they have of what you've helped to create, especially when they had those memories when they were children. Because I have memories like that. Like I've met Spielberg once before, and Raiders to me was and remains everything. It got me into being a creative individual. But now I know it's like I could sit there and just totally go off and like, dude, this meant so much to me. It was this, it was that, it was this. And because he came at it from a totally different place, he was probably like, I was just working, making something I thought was cool. So when I hear people say they were kids and this game actually scared them, I think that's awesome, right? I mean, I don't think, I'd like to think that parents knew their kids were playing it because it was an M-rated game, and I always did take that seriously. I think parents should be responsible for what their kids do. But the fact that there are kids out there that got a taste of horror and darkness through a game I had a lot to do with, and they have fond memories of being freaked out and scared by the shit we came up with. I love that. That makes me very happy to know that, me and the team got to contribute to people's creative enjoyment and creative development when it comes to sort of dark, scary horror stuff.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It really did get to me. I remember I had to
Yeah.
cover my eyes whenever No Face came on screen. I just couldn't look at him.
That's awesome.
All right, so I only have one question on Small Brawl. I know you weren't involved in the game's production, but what are your thoughts overall? Did you want to make something like that, or did you approach Sony about that to begin with?
So Twisted Metal Small Brawl was my idea. I had wanted to do a much more M-rated, which is kind of a pattern with me, but I wanted to do an M-rated Mad Magazine body version of Small Brawl. So it was originally pitched. There was a PS1 game at the time where you played this mosquito, and it was a Japanese game. It only came out in Japan, and it was like a flight game, like an arcadey flight game. I want to think it was called Kai, like Kai or something. And it was a mosquito flying around a little Japanese household. And there was part of it where there's this hot teenage girl taking a bubble bath. And one of the levels is you're flying around her almost totally exposed naked body as this fly. And it was meant to be kind of, body and sexual and all this stuff, but kind of naughty and everything. And I remember seeing that, and I said, that's so cool to see miniaturization, which we've seen in movies since the 50s, but it's always portrayed so benign. It's always like, it's very family friendly. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and all that shit. And it was like, it was the first time I had seen, when you're playing this mosquito, this idea of, that's a neat juxtaposition, what we usually think of as family friendly when miniaturization is there. What if we do make it like R-rated Mad Magazine? So it was going to be the same attitude of Twisted Metal 2, kind of irreverent, fuck authority. And these cars were going to be driving around. We were going to do our version of the teenage or the sexy young woman having the bath or the shower. We were going to have like the plumber fixing the sink, and you could like shoot missiles up his butt crack and his pants would come down. Just stuff that was juvenile, but it was very in that kind of Porky's 80s teen comedy vibe. And that was what I loved about it. And I ended up going off to work on God of War. I sort of was only on the project for 2 or 3 meetings, very much like War of the Monsters. And then it went primarily to Utah, and we had a designer named Steve Sergioli who worked with me on Black, who was the Sony liaison designer. And they just wanted, without somebody like me to stir the pot, their natural inclination at that studio, for the most part, was always to go family friendly, was always to go Nickelodeon, was always to try to be Disney, was always wholesome shit that I fucking hate. And so it very quickly became this sort of, at the most irreverent and violent, it was the Goonies, but it probably wasn't even that edgy. It was probably more like Barney is what it felt like more often than not to me. So, but I barely played the game. I hear a lot of people who have played it genuinely like it, and they made a really good Twisted Metal game that not a lot of people talk about. But I don't think I've ever actually played the whole game before.
Yeah, it did play pretty well, and from what I understand, it used the same engine as Twisted Metal 2, but it does feel lacking in the environment, so that could be why it turned out the way it did. Do you have much time left? I only have a couple questions for Twisted Metal Head On. It's up to you, though. I don't.
Let's do Head On, and then we'll do Twisted. We'll do the other one later.
Yeah, sounds great. So, getting into Head On a few years later, I noticed when I played it, it felt a lot easier. Did you have any hand in design aspect at all when it came to it?
I had nothing to do with Head On. So, Head On was I was making God of War. Scott had sold Incognito to Sony, so they were a Sony division at that point. They were Sony Utah, PlayStation Utah, whatever, but they worked through Sony Santa Monica. They did like Downhill Domination, War of the Monsters, and Twisted Metal Head On as a Vita launch title. So I remember being in the GameStop doing a big release night for God of War in 2005, and sorry, not the Vita, it was the PSP. That was the exact same day that the PSP came out, was the same day God of War launched. And so Scott had a game on the shelf the same time I did. So I was so swamped with God of War. I was kind of aware. I was super aware they were working on a new Twisted Metal, but I barely ever touched it until it came out. So I really had nothing to do with it. The only thing I had to do with head on was when we started Eat Sleep Play, and we did sort of the extra Twisted edition for PS2, and I did the sort of retrofitting the levels for the Lost series on that game, and I created some new characters like Six Pack and things like that, but I had nothing to do with the actual original PSP version.
Oh, I see. I mean, that pretty much cancels out any other questions I had for its development.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to you about Lost. You know, I can tell you that everybody still asks me about the plane crash, but I mean, stuff like that I can tell you about. But that was sort of the Lost version. That was not the PSP version.
I guess we can talk about Harbor City. Yeah, I mean, I didn't believe the plane crash was real either, but there were reasons why Harbor City couldn't happen, right? What led to it being canceled, as far as you know?
You know, that's probably a question for Scott, really. They were developing Harbor City. I had finished God of War. Scott Campbell reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to start a company together now that you're done with God of War? And I said, yeah, that sounds great. Let's start a fucking company together. So if I had to guess, it was that he was going to leave Sony Incognito, which was the company he had built and sold, and he was going to take a bunch of people with him to form Eat Sleep Play with me. And when those people left, I'm assuming what happened was Harbor City had no choice but to shut down. In fact, we did Calling All Cars before we started Eat Sleep Play, I think. And I think maybe what happened is I said, hey, let's make Calling All Cars. And maybe Scott was like, this is the new team. Jaffe's on the new team. I want to work on what he wants to work on. I mean, I'm just guessing at this point because I wasn't working on Harbor City. All I know is when Scott said, do you want to start a company? And I said, yes. He and a bunch of people were available to do so. And I have to assume that in being available either to start a company or work on Calling All Cars, that put the stake in the heart of Twisted Metal Harbor City. And I would have to assume that if Sony wanted that game to ship, they would have said, no, you can't do that. We have to finish Harbor City. I don't know if the project wasn't going well or if the project had 2 more years of production. And Scott's like, look, I'm not sticking around for 2 years. I don't know exactly what would cause Sony to pull the plug on that game. That would be more of a question for Scott.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to contact him.
Yeah, I can send him an email if you want.
Yeah, I guess you can ask him if he's willing to. That'd be amazing.
He probably would be.
Yeah, sure. Let me know.
Yeah, I'll shoot him an email this week.
And here I unfortunately lost the audio, but basically the last part I was asking him about the games that were called Twisted Metal Apocalypse and what I thought were canceled ideas before Twisted Metal 2012.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's part of the story of 12. Apocalypse wasn't canceled. That was just that was okay. So those are titles that those weren't canceled. Those were titles that in the same way that we were doing Road Trip USA Twisted Metal, and we had concept art for that when we were deciding if we were going to go dark with black or we were going to go more Apocalypse. And I guess I didn't think we called it Revolution, but the sort of Midnight Club Twisted Metal and Apocalypse were simply things we were exploring of what Twisted Metal could be on PlayStation 3. It wasn't that we started development and we canceled them. It was just that in the beginning process of making a new Twisted Metal, we were exploring a number of different ideas, and those were the 2 that had the most traction before we ended up sort of pulling the trigger on what this ultimate last Twisted Metal became.
So what did you want to achieve with this big comeback that became Twisted Metal 2012?
I think there were 2 things we really wanted to do. I think the first thing we tried to do was really expand the brand. We wanted to make it more internationally successful. We wanted to take it out of sort of the niche success it had been and sort of get more into mainstream game success with it. And to that end, we tried to retheme it a little bit. We started exploring this idea. I don't remember if we even had a title for it. We were just calling it Twisted Metal, but it was very much like inspired by Twisted Metal merged with like Fast and the Furious. And we're like, okay, let's make it feel more urban. Let's make it feel more not realistic cars or anything, but let's make it feel like this could actually be happening, and sort of extract a large percentage of the fantasy of it and make something more like, you know, something that you could see happening, you know, God forbid, on the streets outside your home, and building a cast of characters and a cast of vehicles that had more of a Fast and the Furious type appeal to them. And to that end, like the most striking example is like we had a new version of Sweet Tooth, which was pretty much just this normal guy who was this bald dude who had flame tattoos on his head and sort of gold teeth grill. And that was going to be our version of Sweet Tooth for a while. And we were going to be doing gang members and Yakuza members and CIA members. And so instead of having literally Mr. Grimm be a dude wearing a skull helmet or a personification of the Grim Reaper, they were going to basically be sort of a street gang that was well funded by Calypso Industries, and they were going to be sort of one of the teams competing to win this underground thing called Twisted Metal. And I still think that idea in a lot of ways could have worked. I just don't think the team was the right team for it. I don't think that they would tell you otherwise, or they would take an affront if I said that the vast majority of the guys out in Utah are not sort of really connected with street culture, racing culture, you know, that just wasn't their scene. And it wasn't necessarily my scene either. I kind of came to it by way of Hollywood's take on it, but I knew enough about it that I thought we could riff on it, but it clearly wasn't a good fit. And so we were still saying, let's expand the franchise. And so we tried to keep that DNA throughout, even to the point that when we said, okay, we're not going to do that version, we were going to look at this Twisted Metal Apocalypse version, which was kind of like more of a Mad Max take on it, where America had been devastated by nukes or whatever, and all the battlefields were sort of, you know, destroyed around Mount Rushmore and things like that, things that you could identify. The real problem with that is Scott really wasn't a big fan of the apocalyptic theme, so he couldn't really get behind it personally. And the other part is that we struggled with the fact that part of the fun of Twisted Metal is you destroying that stuff. So if we drop you into a battleground and it's already destroyed because the story dictates that Mount Rushmore has lost a bunch of its faces, the player's going to be like, well, I want to be the guy who destroys the faces and knocks them off. So we kind of killed that, and we ended up going more traditional Twisted Metal. But for a long time, we tried to keep that sort of street theme, but we just couldn't quite get it for a number of reasons. And so probably 8-10 months into the title, Scott and I both threw the towel in and said, fuck it, let's put armor on the cars. Let's just sort of, let's do what we know works in the context of Twisted Metal. And obviously we never wanted to go as dark as black. We didn't want to go as sort of wacky as Twisted Metal 2 or Head On. So we ended up trying to find sort of a sweet spot that still had the fantasy elements, but at the same time felt a bit more grounded. So part of what our attempt was to do, the two things we wanted to do was sort of, you know, create a wider appealing version of the IP. I don't think we did that, because where we ended up was basically right back where we started, with just a better next gen coat of paint in terms of sort of the world. It was incredibly well done, but it wasn't like we really sort of made it, you know, it wasn't like the Europeans were suddenly going to go, oh my God, Twisted Metal, what's this? It's like, no, it still had that sort of bar band flavor to it. The other thing that I really wanted to do on the design front was I was watching a lot of team games come to fruition, and I started to get really excited about building sort of Team Fortress 2 meets Twisted Metal, and building a class-based online team game where you were able to pick certain vehicles and certain game modes based on the team you were playing with. You really have a real, you would have characters that were really good at playing defense, and characters that could protect other characters, and characters that could sort of, come in really quick, do some damage and get out, but their armor wasn't very heavy. So you needed to make sure there was a healer somewhere on the periphery of that battle. And the idea of a team that really could kind of put together an interesting blend of the vehicles could really dominate. And then also wanting to have a much deeper version of almost all the weapons. A lot of the weapons had alternate functions, special versions. There were layers upon layers upon layers of nuance in the design that I don't think, anyone or a lot of people didn't notice. But everything from, like, we had a vehicle called what was the one with the rat on the top, with the mouse on the top? I forget what it was called. It was some van, and you could fire off the missile, and it would auto fly into a target and do a little damage. But if you managed to fly it on your own into the target, it did like triple damage. But you could also shoot it down, and then there were things like certain vehicles were more susceptible to other, we had a character, I'm forgetting the names, which may be indicative of the fact they weren't that memorable to begin with, but we had a helicopter in the game, which I know a lot of the fans didn't like. I thought it would be a cool addition to the gameplay. And a lot of people were like, oh, this fucking thing is too hard. It's too hard to fight. But you could bring that thing down in a heartbeat if you just launched an EMP sort of freeze missile at it, and it would crash to the ground. And if the player wasn't fast banging on the buttons, you could ram into them and kill them with one big ram. So I wanted to sort of bring a lot more depth into the franchise across the board, so that it could really begin to take its place. We never, esports hadn't really become a thing at the time, or a big thing, but we definitely thought of it as a contender for one of the deep, meaty online games that you and your friends broke out when you really wanted to have a serious competition. And so, I think we succeeded in that more than we failed. I think the biggest problem with it was just that, just like with Drawn to Death, there was so much depth there that if you didn't learn the depth and you just played the game on the surface, a lot of people played it. They had fun crashing into the buildings, blowing things up, and about an hour later, they were bored with it. So it really was one of those games that had a lot of depth there, but we didn't do enough to sort of, the equivalent I always say is, it's kind of like, I don't think we necessarily made a game as deep as Street Fighter 2, but did we make a game as deep as maybe a really good Mortal Kombat? I think we did. But the difference is that when you go into Mortal Kombat, there's a whole list of moves and attacks and abilities just under the surface that you are responsible for learning and discovering. But people didn't realize that with Twisted Metal 2012. And so it would be the equivalent of playing Mortal Kombat and all you're doing is punching and kicking and going, this is fun, it's kind of neat, but it's pretty shallow. And if you don't know to look for that depth in a car combat game, which people didn't because we didn't train them to, you wind up with a lot of your sort of basic audience, like, just comes to the table because the commercial was good or the graphics look good, or they remember playing it a long time ago and go, yeah, it's fine, but it's pretty fucking simple. What's the big deal? So that's a long fucking answer, but that was sort of the gist of what we wanted to achieve with Twisted 2012.
No, yeah, that's good. It kind of relates to also the fan feedback I was kind of going to ask for. And it's funny though, because you're talking how you don't remember those trucks. It's weird. I remember Vermin was the rat one.
Vermin, right?
And
that's
Talon
right.
Talon was the helicopter. I tried to use Talon a lot online, and it never really panned out.
Yeah.
Did you ever see what you're talking about when it came to strategizing and using the weapons uniquely? Did you ever see that when it came to like the high level playing? Because I know you watched some of that, the online high level playing.
Well, I've seen individuals play at an incredibly high level. I don't think, because again, this was before, by the time people were really sharing a lot of videos and esporting and all that stuff, we had our time in the sun with that game. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for me to see people present themselves as a team. They may have been playing online as a team and hopefully doing some of that stuff that we had intended, but because there wasn't like a sense of a presentation, or it wasn't like a team is streaming at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, everybody tune in to watch this fucking thing. You know, you don't really know how people took it, but all I can tell you is that's how we intended it. I get the sense based on internet feedback that some people vibed with what we were trying to do. There was a group of fans from the older games that were looking, I think, for a different kind of depth. Like, I think Twisted 12 is loaded with depth. It's probably the meatiest Twisted we've ever made. But there was a level of depth, or a certain type of depth we had in Twisted Metal Black, a lot of which was totally unintentional and accidental, but that the online community of Twisted Metal fans discovered simply by just going, hey, did you know you could fucking do this? And the developer's like, nope, that's pretty cool. Never thought about it. And so I know they were disappointed because the depth they were looking for wasn't necessarily represented. It was a different type of depth. But I don't really know. Once you put the game out there, especially back in those days, you don't really have much evidence of if it's affecting players in the way you want it to. But I can tell you it certainly didn't catch on as a massive competitive success, which was absolutely the intention. We wanted to make a go-to evergreen, deep competitive game that people would still be playing today.
Yeah, a little ahead of its time, I guess. I feel like games these days have a better chance because streaming is a much more common thing to do these days.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you mentioned that you didn't want to do another sequel, like a sequel to Twisted Metal Black. Any reason in particular? Like, if that was an opportunity for the PS3 title and you just decided to not try that, any reason? Just wondering.
I'm thinking, I think it probably was because like I said, our original impetus for this was, can we grow this franchise? We knew the budgets were going to be bigger than they had ever been before. We knew that the global market, if not entire globe, at least Europe, was more important to the franchise. And in the past, Europe had no interest in it. And we knew that part of the appeal of Black was its M rating, and not just the fact that it had an M rating, but what caused it to have an M rating was the appeal of it, which was sort of the dark stories and the violence and the sort of grindhouse stuff, which doesn't play in Europe all that well, to the point that they didn't even have the movies in Twisted Metal Black. So a lot of it was going, okay, if we're going to appeal to a much bigger crowd, let's try to shoot not just for less dark and violent, but we tried for the longest time to have a T rating. We were kind of like, Twisted Metal 1, Twisted Metal 2 were T-rated games, so was 3, so was 4. And we were like, you know what, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of kids that are turned on by cars and guns, and they may eventually grow into hardcore fans that we're going after. But this time, let's not sort of turn our backs on the fact that there's probably a lot of 9-year-old kids who would totally, their minds would just explode with glee if they're like, shit, I can drive around that city and blow it up with guns and rockets, and my mom and dad let me do it because I'm not like killing people with bloody and hitting them and running them over and shit and knocking them into bloody pulps. So for the longest time, we were really shooting for a T, but the movies came online and it ended up saying, yeah, there's no way we're getting a T with these movies. So.
Oh yeah, and of course, there was a mechanic when it came to running over the drivers.
Sure, yeah, no, and dragging people behind your car and throwing them into a missile launcher, and
yeah.
And end of the day, my desire to have great success in business is beaten into submission by the 12-year-old in me that's like, I can drag somebody behind a car and they scream in pain. That's amazing. Let's do that. So.
Okay. I understand at first you were thinking about making this game multiplayer only and having kind of like a budget title. Why exactly did you want to do that in the first place? Or did it just call us back to that whole idea of how you wanted it to be, the game people would play for years and years and thought that was the way to go?
The thing that this game taught us is that there are really 4 types of Twisted Metal fans. There's the type that loves the stories, and that's why they show up. There's the type that love the single player. There's the type that love the multiplayer. And then there's the type that kind of loves the whole fucking thing. And so for us, we were under the impression that most people love Twisted Metal because the multiplayer. because that was the evergreen mode. You played it forever. You played it in split screen with your friends. This could be the first out of the box online Twisted Metal. Obviously, we had Black Online, but you had to get the adapter sold separately. You had to send in a code to get the disc. This was like you buy it at Walmart. It just fucking works out of the box. And so part of it was just that we said that's probably the most appealing aspect to this game, that it's like, hey, you can play Twisted Metal online for the first time. At least that would be most people's experience, because it's not like most people played the black version with the net adapter. And so we I forgot your question. It's late.
I'm sorry. I asked why I was asking why multiplayer at first before you decided to make it full on retail with single player.
Okay, so that was the main reason, is that we just thought, look, we know we were like, we can come out on PlayStation Network. We didn't really have any ideas for a single player game. We were like, unless you get out of the car in this day and age, people are going to be expecting Grand Theft Auto with Twisted Metal. They're not going to want just a car game where you're running around and just shooting other cars. They want a proper adventure, and we're not the team right now equipped to pull that off. And so that was a big part of it. And the other part of it was we knew that this wasn't Sony's top priority. Like Twisted Metal, we knew was sort of a B title that would make its money back, and maybe we could kind of hit a solid triple, if not a home run, if we could really make it work all over the world and sort of surprise everyone, including ourselves, that it could be the most successful one. And for some reason, I don't remember what it was, but like 70%, 60% of the way through development, Sony came to us and said, we want to make this a $60 full retail title. Can you guys put in single player? And we were like, well, we can, but it's not going to be very satisfying. That's not what this game is. If you wanted single player, that's something that we had to build from the ground up. We had to have characters getting out of cars, and we had to build the levels to accommodate, the scale of a car, not just the literal scale, but the speed scale of how, the visual resolution and the modeling resolution of these environments, which if you're running by them at 100 miles an hour, you don't have to worry about every nook and cranny. Suddenly, if Sweet Tooth's getting out of the van anywhere, the resolution of those models has to be through the roof. And so we said, it's not going to be a competitive single player experience. And they're like, yeah, we understand, but we think it needs it. Marketing wants it. I don't remember the specifics of what the key was. And they said, we'll give you more time to do it, but we really want to expand the product to make it be that. And we're like, okay. And so that's why it ended up going down that road. It was never like our initial vision to make a single player Twisted Metal again.
That kind of reminds me of the scrapped ideas, like where you put it in the Twisted Metal had on PS2 port, where you could run around with Sweet Tooth in like an unfinished stage. I guess they kind of wanted something like that. I didn't know it was so late.
No, Sony didn't necessarily want something like that. They just wanted single player. They knew they weren't going to get something like that because we weren't going to be able to do that.
Okay. No, I thought like when you mentioned GTA and Twisted Metal, but okay.
Harbor City was trying to be that. That's right. But that was built from the ground up to be that kind of experience. But Twisted, by the time we knew they wanted a single player version, we were well beyond the stage of key decisions that get made at the beginning months of a game, where once you lock those in, how the engine's going to work for the game, how the online's going to work for the game, what the base functionality and speed of vehicles and map sizes are. That stuff is locked, and then we couldn't go back and sort of retool it without probably another 18 to 24 months of development time.
Wow, I didn't know it happened so late. The decision, or rather their notion to make that happen.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And tell me again in a little bit, because I do mention this, why you weren't, like you were just saying, like the single player might not be so satisfying. I think that kind of speaks to why you didn't like the racing portions. Can you explain, like, was that your decision, and why exactly weren't you into it once it was finished?
Was what my decision?
The racing portion. I'm sorry.
Well, no. So I walked into the office. They're in Utah. I'm in San Diego, and I walked into the office one day. I flew out there every 3 to 6 weeks. And then I would deal with them and talk to them, and they would deal with me every day on the phone and video chat and whatnot. And but I came out there, and suddenly there's racing in the game, and I'm like, what is this? And Scott's like, well, one of the programmers, a really key important programmer, incredibly talented programmer. He thought it would be fun, so he came in on his own time and he put it in. And I was like, this is not good. I mean, and that's not a knock at him. He's one of the best online programmers and game programmers I've ever worked with. But the physics of the cars, the maps, it's just not set up to do racing. And maybe back in PS1 era, and again, I don't think this guy, and I'm not going to give you his name, but I don't think this guy would take offense to the fact that, we're all getting older. I don't think this guy is necessarily a hardcore gamer. I don't think he ever was a hardcore gamer. And so I don't think he would take offense if I were to tell you that, he may still have had his head back in the PS1 days of that would have flown. Good enough would have flown. But when you're coming out on PS3 where you have, GTA and you have Gran Turismo and you have, I think there might have been a Midnight Club out and there was certainly a Paradise City out from EA and, Need for Speed. And you're trying to sort of play in that playground with the big boys, good enough isn't even close, And so when you put racing in there and it's like a C- at best version of racing, it's unacceptable. And so I hated it. And Scott and I and the team, from the minute it got in, we were trying to figure out how to make it work because frankly, we didn't want to upset and demoralize the programmer. And a lot of times when you make games, you have those kinds of decisions that you have to make, which is a guy who is a crucial part to the online. I don't know if he would have been so demoralized that he would have quit, but it was made clear to me that this was sort of his baby and he thought that the testers really liked it and he thought it was important. And did we want to run the risk of going to war and demoralizing somebody that was going to be so crucial to other parts of the game that to me were more important, like the online being great? And so ultimately we just said, let's try to make it work. We never made it work. It was a horrible part of the game. To be perfectly fair, and again, this is not knocking anybody out in Utah. It's a great example of why that relationship worked when it did and didn't when it didn't. That relationship with Utah worked when it did when I was a Sony employee and Sony was footing the bill. And my boss, I could go to my boss at Sony and say, look, this is going to fuck our game up. You need to call Utah and figure this out. And I could convince my boss, and because my boss was the guy signing the checks, Utah, not always, because these aren't puppets. These are hardworking, talented, well-paid, brilliant engineers and designers and artists. They would win as many fights as they lost, but at least we got to have those fucking fights. When you don't have that structure and you're part of that team, you have to start factoring in really obnoxious things like team morale, which really, frankly, I should have been like, at the very end, I should have been able to put my foot down and say, you know what, we tried to make this racing work for 6 months. It doesn't. Let's have focus groups to prove that it doesn't, so people don't just think I'm being an asshole. But maybe we were just so busy with 1,000 other little things that somehow survived. And that happens in games all the time. And it was a mistake. It was an absolute mistake. I don't think it necessarily cost us sales. I don't think it's like the game died because of it. But we should have known better. We should have been better because it did hurt the overall product. It's a terrible part of the product.
It's so funny because I thought they were great.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
there you go.
Granted, I was a Crimson Fury player. He's like super fast. That might have to do with it.
I mean, they there's two reasons I think they suck. If you don't pick the right car, they're a pain in the ass. We're not giving you enough situational awareness, so you're getting attacked from all sides by the AI. So a lot of times, no matter how good you drive, if you get out in front of the pack, you're fucked. If you hang out in the middle of the pack, you're fucked. Because the AI really wasn't designed to be racing and fighting AI. It's like, okay, I guess we're driving in a straight line, but I'm still going to try to blow the fuck out of one guy, which is the player, And then the other part was just that it didn't feel very good. It didn't feel very good to drive in a straight, curvy line with the physics of those cars. The Twisted Metal cars are really designed to be drive, do a 180, flip around, reacquire, drive, do a 180, flip around, do a 180, and then break off for a little bit to get weapons and then go back into that offensive mode. But this was continuously just drive and it very quickly made the not the poor physics, but it very quickly made it clear that the physics of Twisted Metal are not actual vehicle physics. Like we talked about before, they're not meant to really drive like cars. They're meant to trick you into thinking they're cars. But if we actually had them drive like cars like Interstate 76 or Twisted Metal 3, you would be very frustrated. And that's fine in the context of Twisted Metal. But the minute you say, hey, go race it like a real car, almost immediately you're like, this feels like shit, especially compared to, Burnout, Paradise City, and all the other fucking top racers that were out at the time that players had to compare it with.
Yeah, all right, that actually makes perfect sense. Okay, and let's see. This was compared to all your other games, this one had a lot of licensed tracks in it too. Were those personally picked by you?
Scott and I, for the most part. So we had a budget. I would go into iTunes. I remember it was just fun. I would go into iTunes. Scott would go into iTunes. We'd send them back and forth with each other. Then we'd send them to Sony Music or the Sony Music people at PlayStation and say, hey, here's a bunch of things we like. They're like, these 8 you can have. These 3 they'll never give you the rights to. These 2 you can't afford, but we can have somebody re-record it. This one that you really like AC/DC, there's no way if you get what you want from AC/DC, you're going to have to give up like 8 other songs, but we can give you this band. I forget what they were called. And here's this song called Raise the Flag that they did that sounds just like AC/DC. And it's like, fuck, so it was a constant, playing within the playground of that budget. But as long as we stayed in the budget between me and Scott and most importantly, the Sony Music folks at PlayStation, we eventually kind of, cobbled it together based on just sort of what we thought captured the essence of the game.
So with the live action cutscenes, now getting into the story, it felt like everything came full circle now with the first game and trying to do the live action again. Any reason in particular you wanted to make these cutscenes in this way? Because live action green screen seemed pretty, I don't want to say archaic at the time, but uncommon for video games at that point.
Yeah. Well, so I knew we were going to have to do story when Sony came in, and I'm like, oh shit, now we got to do story again, which I didn't mind, but that wasn't where my head was. I was like, I really want to just be 100% focused on the gameplay. And I didn't want to do like Twisted Metal Head On or Twisted Metal 2. I thought that kind of flash animation also was archaic at the time. You couldn't do that on a PS3 title. But I mean, you could, but I always hated it. It felt cheap. Like I remember when like Infamous came out on PS3, I think it was PS3, and they had this kind of comic book cutscene stuff. And for me, it's so clear they just don't have the money. It doesn't feel like a style choice. It feels like, well, we can't really do we can't really do high-end CG. So I guess we're going to do this. And it just feels cheap to me. So that wasn't an option. Doing high-end CG wasn't an option because of the budget. And so what these started as, I remember I was in the movies and I saw the standees for the first live action G.I. Joe movie. And I remember thinking they looked really cool. I mean, they were hyper real. They were obviously super digital, photoshopped, but I was like, that's really cool. And then I remember seeing the opening of The Watchmen where in the credit sequence, everybody was moving super slow, And so I went to Sony and I said, hey, what if we just write movies where we just have each movie be like maybe 5 or 6 shots like The Watchmen done in the G.I. Joe poster style, and we'll just have a narrator talk over it. And they were like, okay, yeah, we could do that. And then ultimately what ended up happening is I went into the office to storyboard it with those guys. I just started adding live action to it. And before you knew it, we were making a movie. We ended up making a 45-minute live action movie, basically. So that wasn't the intention. But that's kind of what happened. And it was nice that it ended up kind of throwing back to old PS1, era 90s live action cutscenes. Your mileage may vary depending on how successful you thought they were, but I thought they worked for the product. So
yeah, I thought it was kind of strange when I first witnessed it, but I still enjoyed it a lot, and I watched all the behind the scenes stuff, which was really neat. What was behind the decision to reboot the universe yet again? Did you just want to start fresh with Twisted Metal? I mean,
it's never that. It's just we just make new ones. There is no perception in Twisted Metal for us of like canon, because we're not really making a we're not telling some global story. It's almost like a fairy tale, and we're just telling it different ways. It's always Calypso, his contest. He fucks you over. We give a little bit more about his backstory, but we're not in the middle of some grand, 9 maxi series Game of Thrones thing where all of this will ultimately culminate in a giant revelation about who. It's not ever that. It's just not that, And so it wasn't so much. We started with multiplayer being our goal and started with making it more accessible thematically. And we didn't really care about the fact that, well, wait a minute, this might go against some story point in Twisted Metal 4. We're just like, yeah, those games don't exist in a lot of ways. If you talk to Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal 2012 and said, hey, dude, and he didn't kill you, he actually was willing to have a conversation with you. And you said, hey, remember that time where you asked to be a bug in this old lady's garden? I think he would first say, I love how fucking crazy you are. And number 2, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because it's not the same. They're not living this mega story. It's just kind of a, even to the point that even within a single game, 2012, one version Sweet Tooth wins, one version Dollface wins, one version Mr. Grimm wins. It's all just crazy.
Well, I'm glad I get to hear like a definitive answer from. Were you were the sole writer, or not? Were you the main writer?
I was the sole writer on 2012. Yes.
All right. I'm glad I'm getting like the definitive answer from the writer then, because
we did reshoots. I mean, it wasn't. A lot of people say, well, why is Preacher in there? We actually had, and you can see these on the internet. You may have already seen them, but originally what it was going to be is there was going to be different endings depending on if you finished it on easy, medium, or hard. So there were going to be 9 endings per character, or 3 endings per character, or what have you, or maybe 4. I don't remember. And we just ended up. I was really unhappy when the movie started coming in, where we shot all of them, and we knew we were going to have to do some reshoots. But when we started editing them, I was like, these are not working. And so instead of trying to make 9 different movies, 3 for each character, I said, let's just make 1 for each character and put all of our resources into making those as good as we can. And we'll have a better shot at these actually working, because we'll be able to spend the next 8 months just focused on 1 Sweet Tooth story, 1 Dollface story, 1 Grimm story. And in that, a lot of the things like the Preacher and him ending up being trapped in Calypso's wall forevermore, and Sweet Chick at the end being the daughter, all that ended up getting rewritten with the second batch of reshoots. That was never meant to be sort of what it was. It's just that was how I was able to cobble together all of the stuff we had already shot into one big story, which is what we ended up having to do.
Yeah, that explains all the alternate endings, and I like learning why you named Dollface Chris the Sparks. I thought that was a funny, funny little throwback. That explains why you shot so many different endings.
Yep.
Okay, and I guess you mentioned this before, like Sony's the one who wanted you to put in a story and everything, but I'm guessing you never considered having it be like a whole cast of characters, like the old ones?
No, because again, so for me, because we really wanted to try to say, look, we want to increase the appeal of the franchise. To me, I thought, and again, I was really hung up on this idea to the point that, I mean, this is the decision behind it. I thought, and I still kind of think, that having people hang out the windows of cars with sniper rifles and shotguns and lean out the windows with grenades and lean out the back trunk of a car and throw out like a landmine or whatever was going to feel more Fast and the Furious, stunt show, Grand Theft Auto. It was going to be less fantasy and more like an action movie, which would allow us to sell more copies and connect with more people. So the minute we knew we were doing that, we're like, well, who's the guy sitting in the passenger seat? Because we can't fucking write 2 stories per car. And the other part was that we were like, because we are trying to make a team-based game, there was also, and we could have gotten around this, but it just kind of felt weird that you could have a team of like 4 Sweet Tooth trucks with the same driver, the same passenger, It's kind of like when you played that, what was the Marvel Diablo ripoff that came out for a while, Marvel Heroes or something, and there was like 6 Ben Grimms running around New York all fighting. It's like, it doesn't matter, it's a game, but it just felt weird. So we from the very beginning said, let's have drivers and gunners, and let's let them change cars so that when you're on the same team, it's not like Mr. Grimm is on the same team with Mortimer and Axel. It's like, and then on the other team, there's another Axel. It just didn't make any sense as a team game. So when we said, okay, if we're going to make you stay on a team, let's make you stay on the team of clowns or dolls or Grimms or whatever, especially because we're going to let you drive different vehicles, because that's part of the team play. Otherwise, it would be like everybody on one team is just a motorcycle. So everything was driven by that gameplay decision. And it was interesting because the first time I really got the sense that the fans were not going to be happy with that. And again, not all the fans. That's what I'm saying. The hardest part about making Twisted Metal these days is, or at least satisfying the fans that exist for Twisted Metal, is there are like 5 or 4 different types of things people love about it. And there is a large vocal community of people who love the characters and love the stories. And for them, this was like, I would go online after the game came out and I was like heartbroken because people were like, oh, I fucking hate the stories. And I was like, oh my God, we worked so hard on those. We focus tested them. I tried so hard not to make them cheesy. I hired another director because I'm like, I'm not a director. I don't want to fuck this up. And when you press them, they would say, well, no, the stories that were in there were fine. When I say I hate the stories, what I mean is I hate that there weren't stories like the old games where every car had a character, every character had his own ending. And we were at Comic-Con when we started to hear their feedback of like, oh shit, they don't like this decision. And Scott and me and Kellen, who is the art director, were sitting at the Omni at breakfast during Comic-Con in like 2010 going, is there any way we can really quickly make it so we can have a mode where you can have all the old characters? And we're like, maybe if we finish early, but we never did. So, I mean, it didn't hurt us necessarily, but I do know to this day that there are fans of Twisted Metal that are disappointed that we didn't follow the traditional structure. But that was why, because again, this was a game that started as team-based Twisted Metal, multiplayer only. Once Sony came in and said, we have to have single player, it was kind of a retrofit. And I'm not saying we would have changed it even if we knew we needed story at the beginning, but we probably would have. Some of this stuff would have been obvious if from the beginning we're like, hey, if we make that decision for the team, how's that going to affect single player? But because we weren't even thinking about single player when these decisions were getting sort of, laid into the concrete, by the time it was revealed to us that we needed single player, it was way, way, way past the expiration date of changing things.
Yeah, I mean, I personally was kind of disappointed too, but I got over it once I started playing the game itself. Because I feel like I'm a bit of two. I love the gameplay and I love the stories, but at least I got a big helping of one of those. But
Right.
That's just me.
Well, yeah, there's everyone, there's a like I said, there's 4 or 5 different types of Twisted players. And if we were ever to make another one, it would be really, really, really fucking hard, because I don't think we would ever get the money to try to make a game to appeal to all of them. The best thing we could do at this point is to make a comic book or a graphic novel to sort of continue to flesh out the universe, which I would love to do, and then focus gameplay wise just on multiplayer. Because no one really wants a single player Twisted Metal at this point, unless we're really going to go Grand Theft Auto or God of War or Spider-Man and tell a proper single player story in the Twisted Metal universe. The days of like, hey, it's level 7, drive around and kill 15 cars to move to the next level. Those days are long gone. Those days were long gone in 2012. They're certainly long gone now.
Is that how you reflect on 2012 now? That's Twisted Metal 2012 now?
That's how I reflected on it then. I remember going to Sony and saying, guys, this is what it's going to be. Sure, you're okay with this? And they're like, yeah, we're fine. We want to sell it for $60. We need to sell it for $60. It needs to be in a box. And that's not like painting the marketing guys as like, mouth breathers. They were right. They were like, look, we're looking at the budget. We're looking at the interest from Target, Toys R Us, GameStop. We think the best business decision, even if the single player is not something that sets the world on fire, is to have a full featured retail product, and we'll give you more money to do it, even though we know that it's going to be limited in terms of the single player. And we were like, okay, because frankly, we were focused on the multiplayer and figured, okay, even if the single player is not great, it doesn't matter, because, you know, people are still playing Call of Duty games where the single player campaign was just meh, but they're playing it because of the multiplayer. And that was our thinking.
Well, I hope single player's not entirely dead, but
it's dead. The whole franchise is dead.
No, I mean in general, because that's still what I primarily play.
Oh no, God, no! If you look at the games this year, I mean, no, single player's not dead at all.
Yeah, but I totally get how you see that in Twisted Metal. I understand that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much it for 2012. Just a few more, just to kind of like as a conclusion.
Okay.
And I talk about like other appearances Sweet Tooth made in other games. Did you have any sort of input on those, like PlayStation All-Stars? I thought it was funny that Kratos and Sweet Tooth were the rivals of each other.
Well, I mean, so it's funny about All-Stars. All-Stars was, now first let me preface what I'm about to, PlayStation All-Stars was my idea, and it was Cory Barlog's idea independently, okay? But it was everybody who plays games with the fucking brains idea. Because there's nothing clever about saying, hey, we want to do a Sony version of Smash Brothers, right? So I just happened to bring it up. Cory just happened to bring it up roughly around the same time. So and that's all I had to do with it. And then when it came time to put Sweet Tooth in, they would call us, but I was just kind of, they will go unnamed. But let me just make it clear to you that there are studios within the Sony structure that give a shit about their characters to the point that if you want to use their characters in a game, it's like, nope, the shirt's not exactly right. The hair's not exactly right. He or she would never do that. And I'm like, really? You're not negotiating the contract for Jennifer Lawrence to appear in an X-Men film. It's a video game character. No one gives a shit. No one gives a shit. So yeah, they sent me pictures. Is this okay for Sweet Tooth? I'm like, well, do you guys like it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, it's fine with me. We didn't care. It's not that we didn't care because we were apathetic, but it was like, look, you're making your game. Sony trusts you to make your game. As long as you don't turn Sweet Tooth into Strawberry Shortcake, we're fine. And they didn't, and everything was fine. So I had very little to do with it other than that. I know he was in Hot Shots Golf. They sent us some pictures. He fit the style of their game. I didn't give a shit. Fine. He's a fucking plushie now. I was at Comic-Con over the summer, and there's a Sweet Tooth plushie at this point. So I'm just glad that he's still out there making a little bit of goddamn noise, I see your Funko Pop back there of him. I got a Funko Pop of him. I think he's a really neat character, man. So hopefully they'll continue doing stuff with him.
Yeah. Speaking of weird memorabilia or like collectibles, what you call it, I found this recently. I don't know if you've ever even seen this.
Of course, that was the handheld game for Twisted Metal.
My friend randomly gave it to me a while ago, and I just find
it's horrible. It's terrible.
It doesn't even turn on, but yeah.
It's like it's old school Tiger Electronics. You have like 7 frames of animation, but hey, it was early PlayStation days. At least they were doing stuff.
Yeah. Now this was one they've talked about barely at all. But were you in on the movie adaptation at all?
A little bit. I mean, I met with the producers and stuff like that, but I mean, I by the time, I remember 2012 was released. I want to say we were out in the desert of Vegas doing the Shoot My Truck promotion when that game came out. And on that same day, Variety ran the article saying the guys that did Ghost Rider are really interested. They've signed up to do a Twisted Metal movie. And I was just telling people, it's just like, it probably won't happen. These things rarely fucking happen. And so I was engaged with it enough that I had met with the producer, talked with the producer. He and I used to go back and forth on IM sometimes. I think he was also the producer of Ghost Rider. It was Avi Arad. But, it just, my understanding is a script went off to Sony. They thought it was too expensive. I think they were trying, and then there was another crack at it where they wanted to make it kind of more Fast and the Furious meets Twisted Metal, and Sony was like, it's too expensive. I absolutely think there is a great B movie waiting to happen in Twisted Metal. If you look at the Death Race series, the Death Race series is mostly terrible, but do I think it could be good enough to be a good B franchise with all the characters and all the stunts? Absolutely. I think if anybody went to try to make Twisted Metal and tried to spend the money of a Fury Road, I think that would be their mistake. I think Twisted Metal, like I said at the beginning of this conversation with you, Twisted Metal works when it works because it knows what it is. It is a bar band. It is a garage band. It is rough and tumble and ragged around the edges, and it likes that about itself. It doesn't want to be a $160 million movie. It wants to be a $15 million movie made on the cheap by really creative, hungry filmmakers with cool stunts, cool characters, and it's a little cheesy and weird, but it's still fucking fun. That's what it wants to be, and hopefully somebody down the road will be able to make that movie. But I don't think there's any plans at this point for it, and I don't imagine. I imagine the only reason that would ever resurrect itself would be if we do a graphic novel, or if we do something in some other medium that really pushes the IP and the universe building, and somebody in the movie business says, okay, that would make a cool fucking movie. But since I don't really have any anticipation of any new Twisted Metal on the horizon, I can't see an impetus for that spark to get, re-sparked.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to hear like you actually had some involvement, I guess. But you're definitely right about that. It can't be some multi-million-dollar like thing when it came to any adaptation. So it feels. Actually, I guess I'll ask one for Drawn to Death because I know some people are familiar with that. It feels like something you came up with like years ago and was finally able to implement. Were you happy with how it turned out, Drawn to Death?
Drawn to Death? I was exceptionally happy with how it came out. I mean, I think it's some of the best multiplayer game design I've ever had the fortune of being involved with. It had I fucked up and made the same mistake I made with Twisted Metal, which is we built an incredibly deep swimming pool and forgot to sort of build a shallow end that was welcoming enough to teach people how to swim. And so just like my analogy of Mortal Kombat, people came into Drawn to Death and they just sort of ran around and shot people. And if they had the misfortune of being dropped into a match with 3 other people who also didn't know, how to play the game, you just ran around with shotguns and Uzis and were like, what the fuck is this? This is like a game from 12 years ago. There's nothing interesting about this. It would be the equivalent of putting 2 people in an arcade and say, play Street Fighter 2 or whatever, the latest Street Fighter 4. And they have no idea there's all these moves. And so it's Ken punching Chun-Li and Chun-Li kicking Ken. And that's all they do. And they're like, well, this is fucking boring. Let's go play something else. And a lot of them never got around to see people start playing the game at the level that game can be played at and go, oh, that's really cool. So I was really happy with it as a game. I think it's the best multiplayer game I've ever had the fortune to work on. I think tonally it worked, but I anticipated that because we were starting out as a free-to-play game. And listen, this is 2 for 2, Jaffe. It's like, don't change horses in midstream. We should have stayed free-to-play because the reason it was meant to be free-to-play is we made a bunch of decisions about the tone and the depth of the game because like League of Legends, we said, look, it's going to be free. It might get off to a slow start, but people will eventually, hopefully, start discovering stuff and it's free. And it's like, oh shit, you got to play this game. How much does it cost? No, just go fucking download it. That was our anticipation of it. And we made a lot of decisions built around that. But ultimately, even with the tone, I'm really proud of the story of that game. But if you read the reviews, most of the reviews are like, what story, Jaffe? It's just this vulgar game where the people say shit and there's a frog that insults you all the time. What the fuck are you talking about? There's a great, deep, interesting world in that game that I remain proud of that would just, I had hoped the press, it's not their job, it's my job, but I had hoped the press would talk up that part and say, there's a surface to this game that looks very vulgar and obnoxious and juvenile, and that is absolutely accurate. And if you start to explore the world, if you start to read the tutorials, if you start to look up in the skybox and see things happening, that it might take you 20 matches before you go, oh shit, there's something happening in the high school that you can see through a rip in the paper, and you start to have sympathy for the guy who's drawing all this shit. I had hoped that they would sort of seed that out to the audience, but instead they were just like, fuck this. This is childish. This is juvenile. This is not mature like The Last of Us. I want to feel mature. I told my mom I was a big boy critic now, writing about serious, important things. Fuck this game. 4 out of 10. Fuck you, Jaffe, you relic motherfucker. That's pretty much what it felt like.
I do have to admit, I never looked up in the sky to see anything when I played it.
Most people didn't. I mean, again,
No.
it's ultimately, I'm not saying it's the audience's fault or the critic's fault. I'm saying it's my fault because I thought the game would hold their attention long enough that they would play it enough that they would start to see things and they would seed that out there and go, this game starts as one thing. And then, holy shit, we've started to discover there's a lot of storytelling in this game, which is not as vulgar and on the nose. It's about a kid in an abusive home and how he deals with his abusive stepfather. All the characters in that game, it's like the Wizard of Oz. The fucking crazy teddy bear, Alan, is the kid's stepfather. The guy, Bronco, who's the soldier, is his brother, who he idolizes, but his brother is basically living in a drug flop house because he came back from war and had his leg amputated, and the kid can't come to grips with the fact that his hero is actually a human who's having this massive depression he's going through. Everything in there is in there. And so it came out and I was just waiting. It was the equivalent of, like, if you've seen the old Warner Brothers cartoon where the guy has the singing frog and he comes out and he opens up the doors and he throws open his arms and he expects the world to rush in and go, wow, you've made a huge hit, and nobody shows. And it was the exact same thing with Drawn to Death. It comes out and I'm like, I was waiting. Where on my shelf am I going to put my BAFTA? Where on the shelf am I going to put my DICE award? Because I know they're coming, because this is some subversive deep shit that we've done. Nobody cared. Not only did they not care, but they mocked it relentlessly. They were rude and crude and mean and cruel, and it was quite painful. But all that said, I still think it's one of the best things I've ever worked on.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed playing it a lot. It reminded me of The Grid, which was an arcade game by Midway.
I know exactly. Absolutely.
I loved playing that.
If someone's a fan of Twisted Metal and they played Drawn to Death and they don't see that game is Drawn to Death is Twisted Metal on foot. If people don't see that, then I've done a horrible job, because those characters are vehicles, basically, in a car combat game. It's an arena brawler, just like Twisted Metal.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels as though throughout a lot of your career, you experience these like really big roadblocks that either try to hinder your vision or how you want to express your creativity. Do you have any advice you can give to aspiring creators that might experience similar issues? I've never
felt that. Sony was always supportive of me. They would come to me sometimes and say, "Hey, we need to add single player."
Okay.
But I always felt tremendously supported by Sony, which is the only publisher I've ever worked with.
Well, I mean, like, when it came to the cutscenes in Twisted Metal 1 and Black, and how, like, there were some people that didn't like how you were, like, with Bloody Mary and the Preacher, and then when it came to even the feedback, it just feels like there are things that kind of say that you shouldn't make it like this, just like with the Drawn to Death feedback. That's kind of more of what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, look, I've never felt anything but total support from Sony. The fact that, did I sit in a meeting with Kaz Hirai where he said, look, you have to make some changes to a couple of these things? Sure. But it wasn't lost on me that 98% of what I wanted, I got. There's always going to be some compromise when you're spending someone else's fucking money. And I didn't have a problem with that. In terms of the only thing I'll say is, like, look, there's two ways to run your creative life. One is that you kind of live in a shell and you barely peek your head out and you don't cause any waves and you make what the man tells you, and you end up maybe having some success or a lot of success, and that's great. But every game I've worked on, I talked about this the other day with someone else, every game I have had the pleasure to work on, and I may never make a game again, or I may make 20 more games before it's all over, have been passion projects. And even though there are people, or a lot of people, who, even if you look at something like Drawn to Death, if you look at something like Calling All Cars, which are my two least successful games I've worked on, I don't think you can look at those and say there's not a heartbeat to these games. It may be a nasty fucking heartbeat that you don't like. You may not like let's put it this way. You can look at Drawn to Death and hate it, but the reasons you hate it in a meaningful way is because you're responding to my personal soulful vision. And you're just saying, I see the vision, Jaffe, I just don't like it. I would much rather, and I'm so grateful that I so far have gotten to have that kind of career, that every game I've worked on, short of Mickey Mania, because it was the first thing I ever had a chance to work on. That's my DNA. Those are my children. And it doesn't mean the rest of the team doesn't feel that way, but speaking for me personally, that is my children. I guarantee you, most games, especially these days, game developers cannot say that. People don't take chances. A lot of people in the creative world are kind of cowardly. They don't swing for the fucking fences. And they follow a paint by numbers process because that's what the people who pay the checks have asked them to do, because games have gotten so expensive. For me, I have never had that burden, and I've had success because of that and big failure because of that. But I've gotten to make exactly what I've wanted to make. And if I never make another game again and I leave this earth tomorrow, my children will be able to look at the output of games that I've directed or co-directed and say, my dad is in that. And there's no fucking doubt my dad is in that. And how can you complain about that?
Damn, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right about that. How people they don't take risk or anything. That's why I despise certain games the past few years. And that's why I like the indie scene, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. It's all I play these days.
Yeah.
I literally was in Walmart today waiting for my phone to get fixed next door. And I'm like, I'm going to walk around Walmart. I haven't been here in a while. And I go over to the game section and I'm looking, and I'm not going to tell you what the games are, but I'm looking at a bunch of games. And some of these are big fucking games that have been marked down to $20. And I'm going, I don't want to play that. And I'm like, my God, what the fuck does it say about me and my taste these days that I'm not picking that game up right now, and they've marked it down for Christmas for $20 goddamn dollars. I would rather go home and play Project Warlock. I would rather go home and play Dusk because these games have more heart and spirit, and that's what I like to play. So I'm with you.
Exactly. I mean, I'm exactly the same way. So this is one of the last questions. I hope this video answered a lot of burning questions for Twisted Metal fans. Do you have anything left to tell them while you're here?
About Twisted Metal? Let's see. All I can say is,
if anything, I mean, I just figured.
No, I do. I'm just trying to figure out how to articulate it.
Okay.
So a lot of people associate me with God of War, but I would say Twisted Metal, as much as I love God of War, Twisted Metal is closer to my spirit than God of War. Twisted Metal is the raw, aggressive, uncouth, unkempt, societally vulgar aspect of me that I adore. And when I meet other fans of Twisted Metal, even ones who haven't always agreed with the creative decisions I've made when I've worked on these titles, and they tell me that the series has meant a lot to them, whether it's because they've played it growing up with their brother or their dads in split screen, or because the story's connected with them, or they think Sweet Tooth is one of the best slashers ever and he's such a badass serial killer and all that stuff. And I grew up loving all those Jason and Freddy and all that. There is an absolute sense of connection that I feel with the fans of Twisted Metal that I think is a deeper connection with the fans of God of War. I think there is a kinship and a brotherhood and a sisterhood where there's something about Twisted Metal fans that I think if someone did a study would say, oh, it's because all those people were kind of misfits back in high school, or all those people like a certain kind of music. I don't know what it is, but I feel connected to the vast majority of them. And so the fact that anyone to this day is still interested in it, and that they've sat and listened to this and learned about things about Twisted Metal, and they've been a fan of it over the years, I just want to say on behalf of me and Scott and Kellen and Sony and Single Track and Eat Sleep Play and all of us who've worked on them, Incognito. On behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you to them because it's like meeting family members, and we're appreciative.
So, after completing the interview sessions with David Jaffe and planning out the retrospective, I managed to get into contact with a certain someone to talk about a little bonus I was able to get together for the first part of the series. As a little end bonus, here's a brief interview session I had with Mel McMurrin. That's right, Calypso himself from the original Twisted Metal 2. Thanks again for watching.
See if this is where it's at. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Okay, how's it going?
Not bad. Just been working on this. How have you been?
Good. Traveling around the farmlands of Australia, basically, and be in Melbourne,
Wow.
Melbourne later today, and Sydney tomorrow, and then back in California.
Oh, okay. Do
Monday,
you travel a lot?
Tuesday. Not really.
Oh, okay.
My wife's Australian, so
Oh, okay.
we come over here. This is the main place I travel.
Okay.
Anyway, tell me about your project.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm working on this full retrospective on the Twisted Metal series, and David Jaffe has been he's been contributing through all these periods where I was interviewing him about the entire series. And I thought what would be a really fun idea was to have you have a cameo as Calypso, since you have such an iconic voice.
Right.
I feel like it was a really memorable part of the entire series because you were in multiple games.
Right.
And if you wanted to, we would read out the script. It's short. It's not that many lines, but
Okay.
and if you wanted to share any stories, that also would be great as well.
Okay.
And so, you think you're up for that?
Yeah. I don't know if I have any really amazing stories.
No, I know. Just a couple. If anything, but either way.
I am Calypso, and I thank you for watching G. Henry's video.
Oh, sorry. I should have told you how to pronounce it. Genry.
Genry. Okay. Got it. So we're looking at a username. All right.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No problem. So is it
Yeah.
is it Mr. Perez or Mr. Perez?
I guess Mr. Perez is fine. Mr. Perez is
Perez,
fine,
okay. American.
Yeah.
Okay. Your grandmother won't roll over in her grave, or whoever your ancestor.
That's fine.
Okay, Perez.
Yeah.
Perez. Wait, Perez, right?
Perez.
Okay,
Yeah, you got it.
Like Tony Perez back in my day. All right.
Oh.
All right. So yeah, I can.
Yeah, and
mic in a WAV file.
Yeah, great. And just want to get that nice pious voice of yours.
Okay.
To get through like that. I don't know if you recall exactly how you did Calypso, but whatever you think is best.
I'll listen to. I'll listen to some of two. In fact, if there's a particular
definitely.
movie, if there's one movie, send me a link. I know on YouTube, there's the whole collection is up there, but if
I can grab you one real quick. Let me see here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is the best one. Okay. Just to kind of bring up those old memories.
It's too bad we didn't have YouTube back when I did the second and third. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
All right, I'm listening.
Okay.
I see. You want some imitation there.
Yeah,
Fantastic
definitely.
imitation. Got it. Yeah, I forget this one.
Oh yeah. It was so long ago.
Right, but I've listened to. There's some people who've made collections.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Twister is.
She was one of the characters in 2, and I feel like a lot people love 2 the most, and they love the stories, and you narrated most of it, so
I agree with a lot of the detractors on 3 and 4. I wasn't as good on as 3 and 4.
But it was cool that you came back to do the role. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah. Well, I think that was. I don't know how it worked out. I think that was Buzz Burroughs, who was the producer.
Yeah.
For both. He followed it into. I don't know all the ins and outs, but Was David not involved with 3 and 4?
He was not involved. He after 2, he went on to work with Sony on a different game, and so they
Mhm.
had no choice but to let other people handle 3 and
Right.
4. And
Yeah.
he's not a big fan of them either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and maybe it's good that I wasn't as good.
It's definitely one of the lesser known parts of its history. But
Yeah.
I'm curious because I was researching a lot of stuff, and I think you like sent a video or something to David when he was working on the one, like, I would say 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
was you never got any kind of follow up
Oh
on
no.
reprising?
No, we had a lot of back and forth, but they'd already cast and maybe even filmed the
Oh, okay.
Calypso. So he had me read for Sweet Tooth
Oh,
for about, it was almost a week. We went back and forth. It just wasn't right.
oh,
Uh,
okay.
my wife said, "I don't want you doing that role," because she could hear it in the other room. So it was cursed from the beginning.
Oh
Uh,
no.
it was a pretty sick script. It wasn't so comic as these are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a lot more like visceral, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. It's like, where's the tongue-in-cheek stuff here? So no, it was. If I'd been, I don't know, a month or some period of time earlier, maybe it would have been different.
Yeah, wow.
But I should set Google alerts or something. I usually find out about stuff when it's too late.
Oh,
Because it was
okay.
fans basically saying, "Hey, there's a new one. Are you in it?" I'm like, "Oh, I better check on this." So
Yeah. But he's kind of doing his own thing now.
right,
But I've managed to be able to talk to him, and so I'm just trying to get this whole big project together. And of course, I'll message you once it's out, so you can see
cool.
how it looks and how it turns out. But yeah, I just figured I'd ask you a couple things like that. Like, if I didn't know that you were talking to him while he was developing the last one, because it was the last game he did for that
Right.
series. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I found out at least then. Twitter is his preferred mode of communication, or it was
it
then.
is.
So yeah, so it
It
was
still is.
a lot of messages back and forth, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I tried to read that thing, but was not in the cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe I can dig up. I don't know if I'd have an
That'd be
old
interesting.
version of me reading.
Like a recording of it. Yeah,
Yeah, recording reading Sweet Tooth. Have to look
that'd
on
be
that.
insane.
See if it's a drive on a drive somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, the game was yeah, it was cast in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and it was a.
Is that where you reside?
I live 2 hours north of there now,
Okay.
but yeah, I
Oh,
did
okay, yeah.
did for years, and video games weren't completely on people's radar. They were kind of looked down on by actors as, oh yeah,
They still are, honestly.
well,
Well, not
yeah,
as
but
much.
no, but you
Not
can
as
make
much, but
no, you can make a career, and serious actors
that's true. It's
do
true.
games now, and
Hmm.
the amount of money in it is completely different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was a casting agent in San Francisco that called me, and I went down and read. And as I remember, they said, think Vincent Price and Tim Curry, or either that's what I was thinking. I can't remember
Wait,
if that
for which game? 2?
for
Oh,
Calypso. They
wow.
were thinking a
Okay.
voice. So they actually, I think I read for primarily Calypso, but I remember reading for all the parts, and I think a lot of people read for all the parts.
Okay.
And then I think I got to hear some of the voices, which may have been recorded.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember if I actually interact. I definitely didn't interact with any other actors in the studio. It was just me and the producer. I don't
Okay.
remember. I think some of the voices might have been recorded.
Okay. Okay.
I remember I was impressed that they got what's his name, Peter Callender, who did Axel. I think he was a Shakespearean actor. I remember thinking,
Oh.
okay, well that's impressive. You know, I should be very impressed that I'm doing this villain. But yeah, I didn't think about it till started getting fan mail. Going,
Oh yeah.
oh, this is big. And I was playing in a band that we used to do. I think you can look them up. The Bungee Jumping Cows. We were the best science teaching rock band in history.
That's unique.
Yeah, very unique. We had that genre down. But we played schools, and sometimes we played junior high schools. And you know, they'd introduce all the band members, and you know, they'd say, "In the voice of Calypso from Twisted Metal," and I'd do.
They would say that?
I'd do a little snippet, yeah. And at first,
Oh, wow.
it was a joke. And then, you know, we realized when there was the line of 12-year-old boys, you know, wanting an autograph at the back door after the show.
Oh my God.
Wow, this is a thing. And yeah, now they're grown up and getting close to 40, I think. Some of the things.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and
I talked to someone who was like, he was like around 10 when it came out, and he still loves playing 2. Like
Yeah.
with a friend or with his brother. Like it's still a very, for some reason 2 is like the most universally acclaimed one.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and so it's a class. You know, it's a PlayStation classic now.
yeah. And so,
And
but can people play it on anything besides the PlayStation 2? Is it 2? Will it play on the other?
yeah, they could play it on 2 and 3 pretty much, and the PS Vita, which was like their handheld. They
Oh,
could, if they could, because you can still buy it in their store
I
and
see.
download it on there.
and it'll emulate.
But that's
Okay.
it'll emulate it, yeah, and it still plays really well. And like I said, a lot of people, like when you mention Twisted Metal, they think of 2. You
Right.
know, the 2 will be the first thing that comes to their mind.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm sorry to say, besides maybe a minute or two there in the studio, I've never played the game full on.
I mean,
In fact, I'm not much of the gamer. I tell people my 2 games are Rock Smith.
oh yeah, of course.
Which
I mean,
is-
if you're a guitarist, it's really satisfying.
Oh man, it was like, wow, this is a game I could get into. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't play it because, in fact, when I talk about it, my shoulders start to hurt because it's different sitting in front of a computer and mousing all night.
Yep.
If you're holding, you know, a real bass all night, you really feel it the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna fire it up again. I got a travel guitar, so it's really light, so I can
Oh, nice.
play all night and not kill myself. Yeah, that Duolingo. I'm into languages.
Duolingo?
Yeah, it's not really a game. It's a website or an app.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Language learning app. So not really a gamer. I missed the gamer boat.
Well, I feel like that's the case for a lot of people who like they did a couple of roles or something, and then it kind of just becomes a piece of its history.
Right.
You know, in the end of the day, it's like, you know, either you're into it or you're not.
Right.
But it's cool that you were able to make such a impact on people with how you performed.
Yeah. No, it was lucky. Buzz was good. The director. I
Mhm.
think I met David. I don't think it was a recording day. I think I came back to maybe do a
Mhm.
few fixes, and then I got to see some of the footage. So I know the first session, maybe there were drawn stills or something. I don't remember
Mhm.
seeing much of anything. So really, it was the director who kind of painted the picture and just
Okay.
said a little bit more this way. And I must have hit that voice in the audition. So I think I'd done similar villains on stage,
Yeah.
and so there was a role that I'd done a few years earlier that I kind of borrowed the voice, and since then I've done other stage roles where anybody who plays the games would go, "That sounded like Calypso."
So you mostly do like on-stage acting? Do you still do that, or?
Periodically, not so much, anymore. Yeah, but
Okay.
I was trained as an opera singer, and so
Oh, all right.
did kind of musicals and bands, and did a little bit of everything. Sang classical, sang rock, did commercials, did a little bit of everything.
Wow.
But yeah, now I edit video, and I hire myself to do my own voiceover.
It's a good voice.
Yeah, and oh yeah, maybe I should find a link for that.
Yeah, do you have any work that's out there?
Yeah, let's see. Is there one?
I wouldn't mind seeing it.
Oh yeah, there's stuff on YouTube. Let's see. Well, let's see. Yeah, this is kind of the equivalent of the Calypso roll lasting forever and ever. Let's see if this is it. Although I didn't know this was television. Yeah. So this commercial ran on radio. I think it may still run before Oakland A's and San Francisco Giants games. So people know this voice in the Bay Area. They're like, wow. But I didn't get paid for television. This somebody showed me this years ago. I'm like, wow.
Okay. Let me see here.
So this is just me. That's just me doing the jingle.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
And you're saying you didn't get paid for this, or you didn't get like
I didn't get TV,
like royalties?
TV royalties, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I got a lump sum.
Oh yeah.
It's like Calypso. I mean, it seemed like good money for a video game, which everybody hated then, but it's like, wow. Should have had a royalty contract there.
You know, I guess people didn't think how long those would last, because that was a huge controversy. A lot of actors didn't get I think none of them got royalties for video games until recently.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a whole big thing.
Yeah, I kind of had to become, unfortunately, a scab in a sense. It's called a core member of the unions, where I paid dues. A due-paying non-member. I think a lot of actors have gone that way, and it's unfortunate because I know the unions did a lot of work, but they were kind of slow in the digital domain.
Right.
It was like, you can't charge whatever it was back then, $500 or $600 a day for this new thing, but it was changing, because I remember I got paid much more for the for 2 and 3, because it was already changing.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I believe you did some announcer roles before that or something.
Oh, on video?
For games.
Yeah, Konami. Yeah, the hockey thing.
Okay, yeah. I think I saw your reel.
The reel,
where
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me see if there's anything. What was I gonna? Oh, the other villain. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is in a video editing. I don't know if this is still on here, but let's see. That was.
Okay, let me see.
They're angry and frustrated, disappointed and anxious. They're nervous and irritated.
It's the same voice as Calypso. It's the exact same.
So I figured there weren't too many realtors, because this was aimed at realtors who would be gamers, and I think it was right. Although let's see in the comments. Somebody will. I don't know if they found it. Have they found it here? Let's see.
Of neglect.
Where are the
walks us down a surprisingly lucrative prospecting path.
Comments don't just show up here.
To Castle Renly style,
let's see.
Where we learn to resurrect.
This is great, though.
Cool.
And never fear these monsters.
Yeah, I assume you could use more of it. You could use some of this.
This is great. I don't think anyone knows about this one.
No, they don't. I'm looking at the comments. There's nobody, because usually somebody will go. Somebody will just say Calypso.
Where were you, monster?
It was listed for months.
Yeah, I'll see if I can dig up a few more of these.
Yeah, definitely. This is great.
Hopefully I don't get a cease and desist letter from Sony. You cannot use that voice. It's like, man. Oh, I
Hope
wish
not.
wish I had video. Well, I don't think there's video of the stage show where the role that I did before that I kind of
Okay.
personally based it on. I think sounds really Calypso. Oh, in
Okay.
fact, have you heard my singing demo?
I just listened to that commercial. I don't think I heard anything else from your
Oh,
singing.
you heard? Okay. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. I was called back for. Oh, is it online? Yes, Serious Pipes.
Mhm.
Now, which one is it? Well, they're both. Um, Soleil. Yeah, I think it was this demo that got me a call back with Cirque du Soleil. So
Okay.
I went to New York and sang for them, and they said, come back after you've done some physical work, because they were worried about, and I think they were right. It's petrifying to think of doing 8 shows a week.
Wow.
Screaming my guts out. Anyway, let me send you this link,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll hear the sung character that I based the Calypso voice on. So this was years before Calypso existed.
Okay.
And if you go to, I'll give you a minute mark.
All right. So where can I find you?
Go to about second 49, I think.
Okay.
Oh, no, even farther back.
Okay.
Even farther back. Okay,
Let's...
36.
Okay.
So after the jazz, you'll hear this evilish character.
I just imagine Calypso, just the suit, the long hair, and everything,
Singing this, yeah.
singing his heart out.
I've thought maybe sometime I should record something. I was even thinking, I don't know if you know, it's called the Commendatore. In Don Giovanni, the statue comes to life in the opera. It's a Mozart opera. Statue comes to life and pulls Don Giovanni, or who's Don Juan, pulls him down to hell. And it's a perfect Calypso role. Well,
Oh,
actually,
yeah?
Don Giovanni, I was thinking, no, actually, Don Giovanni is more the Calypso.
Mhm.
Yes, I was thinking of playing all the parts and dragging Calypso to hell. Anyway, so yeah, that was my singing demo. So you can see, yeah, I always consider myself more a singer than an actor. So
I didn't know you were so big on singing.
yeah, I was kind of more in that world than the acting world, and acting was like the easy sidelight. Acting's easy; you don't have to warm up, which is not true. But that demo will give you an idea of kind of the breadth of stuff I covered, singing wise.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, next week I don't know what your timeline is, but I'll probably be slammed with stuff. Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for talking to me. It's really, I gotten all these little interesting snippets,
Okay.
as well.
Oh, good. You
which is
recording?
great. Yeah, I have been.
Okay,
So
cool.
yeah.
Good. I hope the audio's good and usable and workable.
Yeah. But definitely, whenever you can act out the part again, then
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll come out great.
Yeah, I'll listen to that. What's her name?
The endings. Yeah.
Twister.
Yeah.
So yeah, the imitation.
Definitely a good
Oh.
base for you.
Like that should look. I was also kind of imitating a voice that I don't
For her.
know for
Oh,
Calypso. And in fact, I should
Oh.
I'll find this voice because I only
Okay.
saw it once. But as kids, we imitated the villain in, I think it's Enter the Dragon, old Bruce Lee movie.
Yeah.
And there was a sarcastic voice we used to do back and forth anytime somebody'd say that they needed more time or hang on a minute. We'd go, you want more time? Something like that. Anyway, you should go back and find the voice on because I'm probably not even doing it very well. But anyway, that kind of sarcasm came out of that. At least my childhood memory, vague memory of it. So, you go as Genry or Henry?
Genry.
You do go as Genry, okay.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is Genry, so.
He's Genry, and that's how you've been known? That's what your mother calls you?
It's just a nickname from high school. And
nickname.
No, yeah. Henry is my actual name.
Henry's your actual name, but Genry.
It's just a nickname. Yeah.
Okay. That's not, Perez is Spanish origin. I was going to say Brazilians always have wild names that sound like English names that aren't. So it's not a Brazilian name.
I'm Colombian.
Colombian, okay.
Colombian, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, one of the things, what did I bring that up to? Yeah, I think because I'm so into languages, I remember bringing it up to the producers is like, hey, I'd love to do these in French, German, Spanish, and Italian or whatever other. And they were like, no, that's not possible. No, it's kind of like they sell the games to other companies and they do the voices. But I've thought.
Oh yeah, sometimes I heard they did do Japanese voices even for Twisted Metal 2, which I have them. But I assume that wasn't you.
No.
Okay.
I did the voice with Cool Borders too. I don't know if you've played that game or remember that.
Yes.
From the demo.
I was surprised when I found out it was you.
Yeah, that was scary because I think that must have been later, and games were becoming bigger, and they tried to get Eddie Murphy to do. They wanted Eddie Murphy to do that Twisted Border role.
Oh, okay.
So they called me in, and I was supposed to do Eddie Murphy.
Like try to imitate it.
Try to imitate Eddie Murphy, and they'd flown over like 5 or 10. It was like a whole room of the developers. So, and none of them spoke English, as I remember. It was just this whole couch of Japanese guys, and I could swear they all looked about 15. They were probably 25. I mean, they were probably young because, I think video games, even then, it was still, kind of an underworld. There weren't established artists,
definitely.
It was just people doing this out of love, maybe. Although it was Sony, so it must have been getting big. And so they just thought I just did Eddie Murphy until they all kind of nodded and said that's it, and then they left. And I think the producer said, I think we'll tone it down a bit because it was over the top.
Yeah.
It's probably sounded more like Eddie Murphy doing Buckwheat doing Cool Borders. It was goofy.
Yeah.
So that's the origin of that voiceover.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. Well, good luck on this project, and
yeah, thank you so much
and
for this. Yeah, this is gonna make it like even bigger for Twisted Metal fans. I know they're gonna flip out when they hear your voice.
Cool. Well, track me down on Facebook because it's funny. I've done little things like this for other people, and it never fails that I'll get busy right when they need something. So don't feel shy about messaging me on Facebook or wherever.
Okay, I'll message you on.